we're live.
Good evening.
Mystery Machine back after a hiatus, shall we say, a football, or for our American friends, a soccer-induced hiatus. Does that sound about right, guys?
Yeah, wish you hadn't bothered.
I'm Dave, Dorias lives.
Turned it off.
Yeah, we watch all that rubbish. We're here now to entertain you. Like Milado, Robin Williams. That's him. I'm Dave.
We got the looks.
And this is... Introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry. Hey, Jay from BHOM. Brief History of Mystery. You know us already, though. So
you know it knows bomb.
Yeah, more than likely. But yeah, Damian from Brief History.
For anybody who deigns to bother to subscribe at a later date, find this video. You don't know us yet.
Oh, good.
But here we are. Here we are.
True that. True that.
As you can tell from the intro, this particular stream today is a very well-known subject. It's about the works of Bram Stoker. Tonight we're covering Dracula.
My notes are
psych. It's the JFK Assassination. Very famous one, this, for the conspiracy theorist guys, eh?
I would say, actually, this isn't a conspiracy theory. This is just pretty close to... Even the government say there was a conspiracy. So there's a theory.
Yeah, is there really a theory? Is this more a conspiracy truth?
Well, there's loads and loads of conspiracy theories, to be fair. But the fact that he was potentially not killed by Lee Harvey Oswald is... When the US... They did a
you
poll
stated
in
it's
the
a
US.
fact. You said it's a fact that he wasn't killed by him. Which I pretty much almost, tend to agree with.
Factual.
In the US, there was a poll, and 60% of people don't believe he was assassinated by Oswald. So
It was 68% or something like that. Yeah, 68. It's quite high, wasn't it?
Is that a recent poll or?
they do it every few years, and it's pretty much consistent.
They
And
love
that
digging
poll
it
in the
back up.
Americans,
There was
they were
one
very
in the
well educated.
60s, just after it had happened, and it was like 9 out of 10 believed that the CIA had something to do with it.
Yeah.
So I just it obviously dipped off a bit from
the 1960s, dealing with a different sort of time. You've just got the Cuban Missile Crisis and all that kind of stuff going on. So a lot more a different kind of paranoia, shall I say? Maybe not a lot more, just a different kind of paranoia feeding a lot of things going on. We've got a much more healthier paranoia in the noughties. It's not, I don't know, what would you call this now? It's not the noughties, is it? We're the 2020-ish type
in the
thing.
teen?
So.
No,
we were in the teenies, I guess.
We're in the
20s. We're in the
Prohibition next.
We get a bit of that flappers type stuff going. Okay, so let's say quickly, we've got a few people in, so we may as well just crack on and see what happens. Always a good thing to do. Okay, so we may as well briefly talk about JFK. So the man himself, let's bang that across the bottom. JFK, the man, the policies. What do we know about JFK?
He loved ladies.
He did.
To start there. Any man that gets to sleep with Marilyn Monroe is all right in my book. I give that man, I tip my hat to the man. He probably told her a little bit too much and got her killed, but he did get her in bed beforehand. And so did
tune in for next week's episode where we do Marilyn Monroe. Wonderful segue.
I've already done a video on it, so you can go back to my channel and find that.
Yeah, just rewind a bit. So he was a ladies' man, and like you said, and quite rightly as well, anybody who can do the old Norma Jean kind of thing is okay in our books.
Good man.
He seemed like a man with good principles, didn't he? Not when
it comes to marriage.
Well, good morals. Apart from his endeavours that Jamie has mentioned, he seemed to have strong morals.
Yes.
Which possibly also ended up getting him killed.
I think there's the way we were discussing this one the other day when we were doing this. There's kind of like the trifecta of powerful people in America that he pissed off. So he was threatening to break up the CIA.
Mm-hmm.
He thought it was too big and too powerful, and he turned out to be correct, because after 9/11, one of the big criticisms was that the CIA actually knew almost all of it, but they were too big. They weren't talking to each other. So, actually, JFK was actually kind of proved right. He said it's the organization is far too big. It's far too its mandate is far too big. It should be broken down.
So the problem with compartmentalization of information It works really well for secrecy with your own technology, but it works really poorly if you get advance notice of a threat against your country.
Exactly. Yeah. He annoyed the industrial military complex with refusing to invade Cuba, and repeatedly pulled back from invasion, even when the Joint Chiefs authorized Operation Northwood, which was a plan to basically have a 9/11 style attack, framing Cubans. One of the ideas was they actually had buildings they wanted to destroy and blame the Cubans, and they'd gone as far as planning it and picking which building. One of the plan was they were going to get a cruise ship, sail it near Cuban waters and sink it full of Americans and blame the Cubans.
Wasn't that they'd done that before in the past either, was it? Oh no, wait. What ship was it they sank that caused a big international incident? The Lusitania, perhaps? Anyway.
Now.
They faked an attack on one of their naval ships to start the Vietnam War, mate. So, I mean, and they completely faked it. So, I mean, and that's not a conspiracy theory. That's history. That's fact. So, I mean...
that's absolute fact.
So, yeah, he annoyed the Joint Chiefs and the industrial military complex with refusing to go to war when they wanted to. They wanted to go and spank the Russians, and they were absolutely... He denied them. And the Northwood operation in particular got to his level. It had been authorized up to his level. And he read it and went, what the hell is this? Something. We can't do that. And actually, I'm pretty sure one of the Joint Chiefs got sacked over it. So yeah, he annoyed them.
Good man, probably, and that's why he didn't pass that. Whereas I think there are other presidents, particularly some since, that certainly would have. Ones that have been impeached, they'd have probably gone through with it. And interestingly, wasn't it after 9/11 when Bush said, "Oh, we never envisioned firing planes into buildings before." You had a plan in '63 to do it. What, you just never read up about previous government plans, Bush? Or
Bush couldn't read.
Well,
he was in that school.
Right, sorry, you didn't have somebody read plans to him.
Pretending to read to him. The audio book probably wasn't available. And then also that JFK, though, to get back to JFK, he also annoyed.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
He also annoyed the guys with the money. He peed them off as well, didn't he? Because he threatened to break up the Federal Reserve and created a new currency basically out of the dollar. He said the Federal Reserve had far too much influence on American policy making, and so he wanted to break it up and create a different system. There's a few people that have a lot of interest in the Federal Reserve, Rothschilds, that wouldn't want that to happen. So basically, there's like the three: CIA, all the money, and the industrial military complex, and he annoyed all three of them.
Yeah, and we'll go into that in greater detail later on, due to why, as in the why was he killed, assassinated, executed, whatever you want to call it, a little bit later on. So all the points that you've just said there will be rocking. He was a ladies' man, of course, like we said. So he's a ladies' man. He's going against the flow of what the cabal wanted, shall we say, or what people say the cabal wanted. You know. The big eye. So he was sort of like he was rubbing people up the wrong way in many ways, wasn't he? His policies were sort of like going against the grain, not massively well taken with the Jews either. Certain trades, percentage in trade regarding American aid that should have been going to certain areas weren't. And then when they were killed, they were going back to where the establishment wanted them to, in so much as the IDF and the military establishment that the Zionist Jews were trying to propagate again. So annoying people over that kind of way. What else do we know about JFK?
Let's say for Vietnam as well. He wanted to pull out of Vietnam.
Yeah.
Far sooner than as soon as Johnson that followed him. Johnson?
Yeah, he wanted everybody out by 66 or 67, I believe. Yeah,
Johnson ramped it up, didn't he? So yeah, and also, I mean, he was quite a strong Catholic, and the Protestants weren't as keen on some of his policies that seemed to be strengthening a Catholic influence. But I can't imagine the Protestants are so limp-wristed. They're like the religion, religion. I can't imagine them actually ever doing anything like violent. But then again, I do remember Northern Ireland.
Well,
I
know,
think
Maybe a
there's been
little bit.
a lot of violence has been caused by religion, and I think through human history.
Yeah, you
think there was
can't
Probably
help
the
but
most
say,
deaths ever.
you can't help but say to yourself, "What's new there?" Then can you?
Exactly.
When religion's involved in it,
It just feels like there's a
organized
little bit
religion,
of well, yeah, organised religion. It just feels like there's a
organized
little bit of
religion,
a
shall we say?
perfect storm against another. This was a president that actually, I know Trump says he does and says what he wants, but then he doesn't actually do anything. JFK actually seemed to say what he was going to do, and then he had the cheek to actually then do it.
Yeah, that's the difference, isn't it? Trump will say what he wants, but did very little. JFK would say and he would do.
Yeah,
much to the chagrin of other. Well, the Kennedys in general. You know, we will crush the Kennedys. The McNamara, everybody. Yeah.
You could argue that the Bush family allegedly destroyed the Kennedy legacy, or was very much involved.
Well,
yeah, I think we'll be going heavily into that later.
Yeah. Okay, so a rundown on.
So just quickly, JFK's dead. Rob's dead. His son's dead. JFK Jr. is dead. Teddy Kennedy had a very strong political career, but then he mysteriously drove off a bridge. He thinking
that woman got killed, didn't she? And that kind of killed his political career.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, that's a very unlucky family.
Yeah, statistically, it's astronomical numbers, isn't it? To those kind of probabilities of that all happening to the one family, without there being.
But he did get to see Marilyn Monroe naked, so it evens out.
I'd posit the argument that many people did.
To be fair, I've seen Playboy. Yeah, we did see that.
Yeah, many people did, and not all of them died. So, okie dokie. So that's rocking. Well, you know, they weren't no need for that, was there really? That day in Dallas, there's a lot of creativity gone into these little banners at the bottom, people. So we appreciate you saying it in the side chat, even if it does mean massaging my own ego with that one. So that day in Dallas, nice and dramatic, even poetic, some might say. Others would say rubbish, but that day in Dallas. So obviously, due to just the sheer amount of exposure that it's had, you got the Oliver Stone film, of course. There's all sorts of documentaries about it. It's not like many people haven't really heard a great deal of what went on, but it'd be remiss of us not to talk about what went on. So he's in November. He's in Dallas, isn't he? He's the motorcade is just turning off Elm Street, I believe, onto Dealey Plaza.
Yep, November 22nd, 1963. If we're going to be exact.
November 22nd, 1963. And well, hang on, let's get a picture up of my lad away now. I don't think he'll mind us calling him Jack.
I think everyone did, didn't they?
You call him Jack. Is that all right with you, Damo?
Yeah, I think that's what his wife referred to him as Jack, didn't she? So
I think she called him Big Boy, didn't she? I think. I did always think that when after the assassination, I saw it at the start of the video, and it's always made me wonder. She's crawling all over the back of the car. Where does she think she's going? What is she trying to?
You're getting fired upon. There's not really anywhere that's safe away from gunshots. I don't know. Where would you go?
So I go forwards.
Crawl into the footwell and crouch as much as you can. That's probably what I'd do.
Yeah, except she sprawled herself over the back of the car. It's strange. I don't know what she's doing.
As things will transpire, there are theories as to what she was trying to do, given what she was, what nurses saw when they arrived at the hospital, and what Clint Hill, the agent that was on the running board and the vehicle immediately behind, when he obviously ran up to the presidential limousine and climbed onto the back. So there are theories about what she was trying to do.
I haven't heard that, so I'll be looking forward to that. Yes,
you cheeky monkey. So it's a game, innit? Okay, so 12th. I'm trying to stay professional. 12:30, November the 22nd, 1963. So from a window of the 6th floor of the Texas Book Depository store, Lee Harvey Oswald, who was using a mail order rifle, which is a Manilica Carcano in 7.65 caliber, allegedly fired 3 shots that killed President Kennedy and wounded the governor of Texas, John Connally, in an open car motorcade in Dealey Plaza. And then Oswald took a bus and a taxi to his the rooming house he was staying at, and was ready to leave that building. And about a mile away from there or so, he was stopped by a police officer, patrolman J.D. Tippett, who believed that Oswald resembled the suspect that they were already looking for. We'll go into what happened in a sec. And he shot him. He shot him using a .38 special revolver about 1:15. And then at 1:45 p.m., Oswald was seized in the Texas Theater by police officers responding to his reports of a suspect. And he's the following day, pretty much early hours of the morning, 1:30 a.m. on the 23rd, he was formally arraigned for the murder of President Kennedy. But there was some that say that at least 7 shots were fired that day and not the 3. 2 allegedly hitting the windscreen. And according to some witnesses, 1 bounced off the road on Elm Street. Another shot struck Kennedy from the front into his throat and came out of his back, some people say. The Warren Commission said that say again, sorry, Jamie.
So that's clever that it went in and then did a UE.
Yeah. So the official line is that the first shot missed Kennedy, and nobody thought anything of it because they thought it might have been a car backfiring or something like that.
Yeah.
And then the second shot hit him in the neck, or in the back of the neck, and exited out of his throat, causing him to rock forward and bring his arms up to his throat in pain. And this shot also then went into Governor Connally and hit him in the back, collapsing his lung, coming out of his chest just underneath his nipple and striking him in the left wrist. And then the third shot, the famous shot, is the shot that killed President Kennedy, hitting him in the head. So thoughts on that so far, guys, before we get too much into what we're going on there. What do you think? I'll rock a few more pictures.
Sorry, go on.
I've got a few problems. Even the government report, not the Warren Commission, the second one, even they said there was evidence that there was at least 4 shots, even though we know Oswald only fired 3.
Witnesses
there's been lots of questions
that there was a miss on the first shot. They heard the first shot and it didn't hit. It went past, didn't it?
Yeah, which when we talk about his ability to actually shoot, I'm sure we'll discuss that again. His accuracy. One of the problems I have with that is that he was, like you said, he was identified by Officer Tippett. The identification come from this Howard Brennan. So Howard Brennan was on the road, looked up, saw a rifle sticking out of the window of the 6th floor of the book depository, and was somehow able to give a description of Lee Harvey Oswald, a description good enough that then this Officer Tippett saw him miles away, up to 2 hours later, and thought, "That's my man. I'm gonna arrest him," sort of thing. Officer Tippett was then killed by Oswald. He pulled a revolver and shot him 4 times. How on earth are you looking up to a 6th floor? I mean, what was Oswald doing? Leaning out the window, waving. I mean, so Oswald's got a rifle, which you would assume he would be putting on the windowsill or something to steady to take aim.
Possibly not. Most people shoot from inside the room. They don't expose themselves out of a window.
That's what I mean. He'd have to be leaning out of the window, wouldn't he, for Howard Brennan to even see him? So how did he get a description 6 stories up, remember, as well? Because, the angle. For him to be able to see into the window, I think...
I was going to say, there's all the falling passport, yes, on 9/11, I think he's making reference to extreme evidence that just shouldn't really exist.
Okay, well, if we're led to believe what we are led to believe, that's the view that Lee Harvey Oswald would have had looking down Dealey Plaza from the 6th floor of the Texas Book Depository store. That would be the view that he would get of President Kennedy's motorcade as it went down Dealey Plaza. As we're seeing that on the screen now.
Yeah.
For your perusal, people.
Now, this was on the corner that was furthest away, there was another corner, wasn't there, on the other side of the front of the building that was a lot nearer to the incident.
Well, that's taken from the actual window the shooting was supposed to have taken place from.
From where the rounds were found, and then the rifles and found hidden between boxes, isn't it? So there's also things about the way he then left. Sorry.
No.
So when Oswald's leaving, he's stopped by a policeman, and he's with his boss, whose name I can't find, Roy Truly.
Roy Truly.
Roy says he looked startled, but he identified him as an employee to the policeman, so the policeman let him go. Why was there? Well, I can understand why there was a policeman there, and then Oswald walked out the front door just before the building was locked down, because obviously they're going to start locking all the doors down. He was seen by Robert Reed, and Mrs. Reed, the clerical supervisor. They were then reported to say he was very calm. And she said something about, the president's been shot, and he apparently mumbled something in return, sort of thing. But again, it's a contradictory information, and I still don't understand why the policeman just said, okay, go on then. I think he'd say, stay where you are. We're locking the building down. Nobody move, sort of thing. But he didn't. He just let him walk out the front door. Seems strange.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree with that. I'll just rock another couple of these pictures. We like this type of thing. So the rifle, the Manilika Carcano, as myself and Jamie briefly discussed earlier, whilst that is a Manilika Carcano in 7.65, the cases that were found for the rifle on site, I believe, were Mauser 6.5 millimeters, so a completely different caliber, which is interesting.
Yeah, I've got it down that actually that the rifle was a 6.5 mil. That's some of the research I found, if I can find it.
And
this was an Italian rifle, wasn't it? It was actually quite old.
Yeah, the Manilika Carcano. Yeah, well, it's joint big Carcano from Italy, Manilika from Germany. Yeah. And the 38 special there, which allegedly Lee Harvey Oswald used to shoot off Patrolman Tippett, just later after the shooting at Dealey Plaza.
$30 bought through mail order. The rifle was $29 bought through mail order. Just anybody that says you shouldn't have gun controls. He bought 2 weapons through mail order using a fake name for $30 each. I know that was in the 60s, but it's not got much better since.
You still get an assault rifle, can't you, for like $500 in America? I think. I'm not sure. Don't hold me to that, but I'm sure somewhere on like the chain store, low budget, assault rifle for family protection.
I was wrong actually. It was a 6.5 mil Carcano model 9138 carbine. He actually bought it for $19.95. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
1995.
Yeah, and the revolver was a 38 Smith & Wesson that he bought for $29.95.
Yeah, I mean 38 special caliber. Yeah.
A Hiddle was the name.
Even inflation adjusted, it's pretty small change, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
38 special. Okay, so going on a little bit more about what was going down. So, a little bit of some graphic information in this one, but you've been pre-warned, so we're just going to crack on. So Kennedy we're covering the Zapruder footage in a little while, and I'll just show the Zapruder footage. So you've been warned about that as well, really. So Kennedy was waving to the crowds on his right with his right arm upraised on the side of the limo when a shot entered his back, penetrated his neck, which damaged his spine and the top of his right lung. And the bullet exited his throat near his larynx and nicked the left side of his thigh. He raised his elbows and clenched his fists in front of his face and neck, and then leaned forward and to his left. And then Jackie Kennedy sort of puts her arms around him. It says Governor Connolly also reacted after the same bullet penetrated his back just below his right armpit. The bullet created an oval-shaped entry wound and impacted and then destroyed 4 inches of his right 5th rib and exited his chest just below his right nipple, which created a 2.5-inch oval-shaped air-sucking chest wound. He's also said that because his wife pulled him over to the side, that actually closed the chest wound, which probably saved his life, actually. That same bullet then entered his arm just above his right wrist and cleanly shattered his right radius bone into 8 pieces. And the bullet exited just below the wrist at the inner side of his right palm and finally lodged in his left inner thigh. Kennedy's blood and fragments of his scalp, brain, and skull landed on the interior of the car, the inner and outer surfaces of the front glass windshield, the raised sun visors, the front engine hood, and the rear trunk lid. His blood and fragments also landed on the Secret Service follow-up car and its driver's left arm, as well as on the motorcycle officers who were riding on both sides of Kennedy just behind his vehicle. After Mrs. Kennedy crawled back into a limousine, as we alluded to before, she scrambling around on the back. Both Governor John Connolly and his wife heard her say, "They've killed my husband. I have his brains in my hand." Mrs. Kennedy recalled, she said, "And all the ride to the hospital, I kept bending over him saying, 'Jack, Jack, can you hear me? I love you, Jack.' I kept holding the top of his head down, trying to keep the brains inside." Which isn't great, really. And there's other witness accounts. I'll go through some of that. Well, I'll do one now. We've got Jean Hill was a pretty famous witness regarding this. And in a statement she made to the Dallas Police Department, this was her and Mary Mormon were stood together. Mary started to take a picture. Said we were looking at the president and Jackie in the back seat. And just as the president looked up, 2 shots rang out, and I saw the president grab his chest and fall forward across Jackie's lap. There was an instant pause between 2 shots, and the motorcade seemingly halted for an instant. That comes up more than once, that there were signs and signals given by people that were stood at the side of the road, and then when them signs and signals allegedly were given, that the car actually slowed down even though it was under fire from an assassin, as it were. So it seemingly halted for an instant. She then says, after those 2 shots rang out, that 3 or 4 more shots rang out, and then the motorcade sped away. She said she saw some men in plain clothes shooting back, but everything was a blur. And Mary, the woman taking the photographs, she took a photograph which was analysed during the Warren Commission, actually, where she does capture the 6th floor of the Texas Book Depository. I'm not sure if that photo has ever been released because I'm not sure that it shows anything whatsoever, but she did capture it. She saw some men in plain clothes shooting back, like I said, but everything was a blur. And Mary was pulling on my leg saying, "Get down, they're shooting." Now, Jean Hill was interviewed by Arlen Specter from the Warren Commission on the 24th of March in 1964. And he said to her, "Did you have any conscious impression of where the second shot come from?" She said, "No." He said, "Any conscious impression of where this third shot come from?" And she said, "Not any different from any of them. I thought it was just people shooting from the knoll. I did think there was more than one, though." He then said, "You did think there was more than one person shooting?" And she said, "Yes, sir." So he said, "What made you think that?" And she replied, "The way that the gun report sounded and the difference in the way they were fired, the timing." You know, he don't want to say, you know, "Did you have any idea where they were coming from?" And she said, "No. As I said, I thought they were coming from the general direction of that knoll." Which we'll then go into it. Where one more, and then I'll pass it around, is Woody Woodland was also interviewed a guy called Ricky White, who was the son of Roscoe White, for a magazine a few years back. He said that the fatal shot was fired by the man behind a stockade fence. And then it states that he hands the rifle to a man who was to the right in front of him, because he was trying to throw it over the fence. He threw it over the fence, so then he himself could jump over the fence. And there was a man that was evidently standing just to the right in front of him that was filming. Now we know somebody was filming it because we have the Zapruder footage. But somebody stood just to the right of him. He was on a plinth, weren't he, like a stone plinth for Zapruder. Like he was filming the motorcade because he talks about a military man that he had to hurl over the fence and obtain his film. So before we move on from that, what do you think about then the witness testimonies there?
The witness testimonies of how many shots there are, I don't think are particularly reliable. Also, I mean, where the noise comes from, because you're basically in there's several buildings. The gunshot the sound would reverberate and echo, and it's quite difficult to tell where the sound comes from in those situations. Sound bounces off a building. It sounds like it's come from over there, but really it's come from another location. But when they say it sounded like they were coming from the grassy knoll, that's the opposite to what I'd expect. I'd expect them to think it came from a building, because that's where, potentially the sound would bounce off. It needs to bounce off something solid, you know what I mean? So you'd think, if I understood somebody said they actually thought it come from the building, I would go, you might have just heard it like sort of about the sound bouncing around. For them to say this actually coming from where it's clear, there's just a bit of a hill and then it's the top of the bridges and the main road. It's kind of opposite what I'd expect. But there was a lot of witnesses to say they thought that the shots came from the grassy knoll. I mean, you talk like 40, 50 people.
Yeah, there is a lot. Yeah, I've actually made notes of a lot of what people have said and the names of these people that have said they heard shots from the grassy knoll. Even the response of Secret Service agents and police running to the grassy knoll, not to the Texas Book Depository building. The
one I thought was interesting was Buell Wesley, Bill Lovelady. And I didn't pick these three guys just because one of them's called Lovelady. I didn't, because I wouldn't be that childish and petty a little bit. And Otis Williams, and they were actually stood at the book depository.
Yeah, they were. Yeah.
Or near the steps of the book depository. And they said the shots came from the grassy knoll.
Yeah,
that's where the sound came from. I know we're going to talk about the badge man and the image.
Yeah,
but for them to be directly beneath where the shot was being fired, and for them to think it came from the grassy knoll is odd. I can't quite get my head around that. And it's not just that one or two people said it. A lot of people said it.
Now, you coupled with the fact that, Lee Harvey Oswald, yes, was an employee, but multiple people seen him at a Coke machine at 12:30 when the shots were being fired. So not only is he getting a can of Coke on the ground floor, he's also on the 6th floor shooting out the window.
Yeah. And actually, that was his testimony, wasn't it? He said he was a patsy, and when he was being interviewed by the police, he told them that's what he was doing. He told them, I'd go into the first floor to the break room, then he went up to the second floor to get the Coke, and then he went back down, and he never went up to the 6th floor. That was his testimony, and it was, like you said, it was backed up by some witnesses that said they saw him at the Coke machine. I would say that the timing might be difficult there. I mean, they could say, I don't know about you guys, you say about 12:30, they actually look at the clock, they know exactly what time it was. I think there could be a bit of variation there, but
something like that, it's a big thing that everybody's aware that President Kennedy's driving down the street. There's loads of people out in the street cheering him along. True. And then it's like, how long is it before there's been some shots fired, something's happened, somebody's shooting or whatever, for that to ripple back into the building? I think, the time lapse, you do make a good point, but it'd have to be quite, it's congruent with the story, is the timeline, that, from what I'm led to believe. You would imagine a much bigger gap in between them for it to be valid, though.
Something else I just thought about as well. I've not actually read any witnesses that were in the book depository say they heard shots.
That's the other thing. No, you've raised a good point. I don't think any that were interviewed at the Warren Commission. The thing about the Warren Commission is anybody who didn't say it was coming from the Texas Book Depository store were ignored. It wasn't in the Warren report, even though we have witness testimonies to the Dallas Police Department and to private investigators and so on and so forth, and lots of these saying that the gunshots come from the grassy knoll. If it didn't fit, I want to be careful what I say here, but if it didn't fit what seemed to be the narrative, then it was ignored when it came to the Warren Commission.
All you have to do is say allegedly and do that, and you can say whatever you like.
Of course, what am I thinking?
That's what you got to do.
What am I thinking?
The good old thing about the Warren Commission as well is they reckon there's anything up to 600 people in the Dallas in the square that day. but only 200 were ever officially interviewed.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that nowadays? That if that happened, nobody would be allowed to leave and everybody would be interviewed. But then the Warren Commission had access to basically those people. So they only had access to actually witness testimony of a third. I mean, that's an estimate as well. There might be more people in the plaza than that. They only had witness testimony from a third of the witnesses. 2/3 of the witnesses were completely ignored. That's just
the next JFK needs to drive around in the Pope-mobile. I think it was a bit naive of him when he was making so many enemies to drive around in an open-top car in a
big berth
in a city, in a state that's always been known for, well, is even now still known for perhaps wanting its independence and going back to being the Republic of of Texas. So there were some people that didn't like you when you were in there. You're on their turf in an open-top car. It's not a smart move.
I think most people in America consider themselves Americans first, and then like wherever they're from. I think Americans, they consider themselves Texans first, and Americans second.
Well, Texans
first.
They definitely do. I do speak to. I don't know if you're out there, Jason, but if you are, then you'll be able to back me up on this one. There's plenty of people that Texas first.
Yeah,
the USA afterwards. Yeah,
if Amy's knocking around, she's a good Texas girl. She'll tell you.
I think it is right early on in it. I'm pretty sure that Governor Connolly said something along the lines of, "You see, Mr. President, everybody in Dallas loves you." So he was well off the mark, because a couple of minutes later, we all know what happened. But something along them kind of lines. I should have made a note of it. I did read it just earlier today, but something like that. That as the motorcade it turned off Elm Street onto Dealey Plaza, that comment was made, or see, Mr. President, or look, Mr. President, everybody in Dallas loves you, or some words to that effect.
We all know that when we say stupid shit like that, you're supposed to go touchwood. It's just
you're asking for it, really.
You're asking for trouble. It's like being at work and going, "Quiet day, innit? This is lovely. We're having such a quiet day." And then the phone calls, and everything goes to pot. You don't say things like that.
Almost jinxed it, didn't he? The person that made that statement.
Yeah, don't poke fate. It's got an evil sense of humour. Don't poke it.
Yeah, don't poke the bear, as it were. Okay, so the lots of other things we need to go into, so we'll crack on. But we'll just like the so-called perpetrator. We haven't finished what goes on in the day. This is for the people in the side chat, by the way, because we will be flitting back because of other elements of the story.
Yeah.
That are all involved, so the grassy knoll, Badgeman, so on and so forth. So we will be coming back to what happened, as well as the missing evidence, and various other bits and bats like that. But so Lee Harvey Oswald's been caught in a theatre just a couple of hours later, and he's taken, and then in the early hours of the morning, 1:30 a.m. on the 23rd, he's charged with the murder of JFK, the assassination of JFK. So, Lee Harvey Oswald, then. Let's have a look at this little tinker.
He's a good-looking fella. Look at that smile.
Look, beautiful. So, he born in 1939 in New Orleans, Louisiana, to Marguerite and Robert Oswald. But he was born 2 months after his dad died. Following her husband's death, Marguerite sent Oswald and his 2 older brothers to live in an orphanage, and then his mum got remarried again. But the family kept moving between 1939 and 1956. With his mum was working long shifts, and Lee Harvey Oswald was often left to just like look after himself. He'd spend a lot of time at the library, and wagging it from school, playing truant from school. And he was eventually put in a detention center, and his social worker described him as being emotionally detached, giving off the feeling of a kid nobody gave a darn about. And in October 1956, he dropped out of high school and joined the US Marines, where he was considered a competent sharpshooter but an indifferent Marine. We'll come back to that in a sec. He began expressing pro-Soviet and politically radical views, and on a hardship plea, secured release from the US Marine Corps in 1959. And 9 days after that, he left to go to the Soviet Union, where he tried unsuccessfully to become a citizen. And in Minsk, where he got a job, he met and married in 1961 Marina Nikolaevna Prusakova.
I didn't have to say that name. Nikki, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Everyone's glad you didn't have to.
You know how
Just go,
excellent
Nikki.
at foreign names I am, though. I mean, I could have said it. I just chose not to.
Just easy just to say Marina. What was I thinking?
Marina, Aquamarina.
So 30 months later, in 1962, he was able to return to the United States with his wife and 3-month-old daughter, June Lee. I don't even know if that's relevant, but anyway, in January 1963, he bought a .38 revolver, as Jamie was telling us about, and then in March, a rifle and telescopic sight through the mail, as Jamie told us. Now, again, a matter of contention, this one, but he's supposed to have had Marina take a picture of him with the weapons. Some people think it's faked, but there is pictures of him holding these weapons. A document that will be later be used as criminal evidence against him. As Oswald's rifle was eventually identified as the firearm used to murder Kennedy. Nearly done. On April the 10th in Dallas, he allegedly shot at but missed an ultra-rightist former Army general, Edwin Walker, tried to assassinate a retired general of the Army. And later that month, he left his wife with a friend in Dallas and he went to New Orleans, where he set up a one-man branch of the Fair Play for Cuba Committee, and he was distributing pro-Castro leaflets. And in September, he went to Mexico, where, according to the Warren Commission, he tried to, in vain, to get a visa for Cuba and to get Soviet permission to return to the USSR. In October, he returned to Dallas and secured a job at the Texas School Book Depository Store.
I think he'd have been more likely to get back into Russia if he'd took his wife, who was Russian, with him.
That is a good point, that, actually, Jay. That is a very good point.
Like logic. I'm banging him out the park today, mate.
Yeah, you're all over it. You are.
One good point after another.
Let me tell you, that picture on the screen there, not that we pat ourselves on the back at all, people, but that picture there, there he is. He's doing his pro-Castro kind of stuff there, that kind of shenanigans going on. Yeah. Well, that'll have really inspired people to like him, no doubt.
Yeah. I like him. So this photo, like I say, it's supposedly, we know it's fake because Kevin Costner told us it's fake.
True.
And I believe everything Kevin Costner says. But I got to admit, it does kind of look fake.
I've got to be honest, though. I believe anything anybody called Kevin says.
Yeah, Kevin is just a reliable name.
If you can't trust Kevin, who can you trust? Yeah.
Keith's are pretty reliable as well. It's a K thing. I think Kenneth's as well. If a Kenneth tried to sell you insurance, you'd buy it.
If you stare at the left side of his head, because it lines up his neck with the like a pillar on the wall, it almost looks like his neck can go invisible, and it's just a floating head that they've photoshopped in. Sorry, I was just staring at it for ages then.
No, please continue. That is exactly why we're here, isn't it, Damo? That's.
It's probably just an illusion of the one side of his neck lining up with the wall. It isn't actually that, but I just didn't see that a floating head.
His arm that's holding the piece of paper doesn't look right either. But it could just be. It was obviously a bright day. It's 1960s cameras. I'm sure there's probably lots of reasons why it looks odd. Was
that the rifle that he assassinated Kennedy with as well, that he happened to be holding there for this, almost like a glory shot?
Allegedly so.
Yeah, right. It's almost too perfect, isn't it? Fuck off. Pull the other one. Oops, sorry.
No.
That's pretty much how I feel.
We're past 9 o'clock. The watershed's out of the way, baby. Say what you want.
And if you want to go very perfect, let's wait until we talk about the magic bullet. If you want to talk about
yes, we've got lots on that.
More explosive.
Look at the state of him. He wasn't treated well for those couple of days when he was incarcerated, to be fair.
No.
I think if you're going to go around shooting the president of the United States, you're going to get a bit of a kicking.
Yeah. When he was dragged out of the theatre, apparently he was shouting police brutality,
yeah,
as they were dragged him out of the theatre.
Yeah.
And I just looked for one of the cops to go, not yet, mate. Give us a minute.
Yeah.
As soon as no
We
one's
haven't-
looking, we'll show you police brutality.
We haven't even started yet.
Yeah. Tell
He
us what
just-
you want us to say.
He has the look of a man there that's just dejected. He almost knows it's like, right, I've been put in as a patsy here. How do I? And he can't think his way out of it. Do you know what I mean? He almost looks like he just deep thought but lost. Yeah, I don't know.
A lot of the reports when he was in the Marines, though, actually said that he was of higher intelligence, higher than average intelligence. And when he did his course in using the radar operator and aviation identification, he finished 7th out of 30, which isn't too bad. He was always considered to be they thought he was of a more than average intelligence.
Well, can I just want to interject with something there? I mean, you've unpicked that theory already, haven't you, by pointing out one really good thing. He wants to be able to stay in the USSR and doesn't take his Russian wife over there to do it. I mean, that was a really valid point.
Which I think would give him the right to, wouldn't it, almost? I mean, in the UK it would. If you're married to a British person, whoever can wander. So I don't know if the Russians rules the same. But I was saying as well that the Russians... He went to Russia to think, and they basically said they didn't want him and sent, told him to bugger off.
Yeah.
He, at the height of the Cold War, a radar operator defects to Russia and they're not interested. Really?
That's another very valid point.
Yes.
Absolutely on fire. In fact, do that again.
Or is it possible that perhaps this gentleman was some kind of double agent involved in the spy intelligence world and was operating perhaps under different guises for different governments, depending on what he was doing?
I think that's what the Russians believed. The Russians didn't believe him. That was the point. They thought he was like a double agent or something. They thought they were feeding him. They were feeding him bull, basically. They thought he was lying. So that's why they weren't interested. They thought he was a plant, which maybe a double agent, quadruple agent.
That's a quadruple agent.
Yeah,
absolutely, very, very possible. But yeah, like you say, he did get a bit of a kick in. He was not. Obviously, there was a massive amount of stuff regarding Cuba going on, and this really is the height of the Cold War, isn't it? So there's a lot going. I'm not trying to justify what the police done to him when he was taken into custody. Just that I sort of understand the mentality and why they was harsh with him. I don't condone it.
As well, man. Our police, the attitude was to knock heads. It was a completely different age. It wasn't. It was acceptable, wasn't it? To give him a bit of a slap. It was almost expected. So it's also interesting to know how he actually got demoted. Because he was a private first class and he got demoted.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
it's stupid. Why? First of all, he accidentally shot himself in the elbow. How do you even do that? That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that is fairly interesting.
What?
Yeah, he shot himself in the elbow by accident. There was a sergeant who was involved in the discipline action against him. So Lee Harvey Oswald apparently sought him out and started a fight with him. And that was his second sort of disciplinary action, and then he got demoted. And then while in the Philippines, he just randomly decided to shoot a rifle into the jungle blindly, inexplicably, for apparently no reason. And that was kind of like the last straw. So I think then when in 59 he asked to leave, I'm pretty sure nobody was arguing.
No.
They're like, yes, go on, dumbass.
We'll give you your discharge. Now do one.
Or the CIA said, we've got a job for you, so we need you out of the Marine Corps. One of those two things happened. I'll possibly be leaning towards the latter. Yeah.
It's not like the CIA have been involved in getting people to go around and pose as the, like when he was handing out leaflets in Cuba that were pro-Castro, posing for the opposition, and really with ulterior motives whilst he was in Cuba. I could well believe that.
The thing is, though, final note on this idiot. He got a security clearance while he was in the Marines to work on radar. Particularly in the 60s, this was highly secret technology. So you needed to have security clearance, which he passed with flying colours, apparently. They didn't care that he'd gone to 22 different schools, that when he was in one of those schools, a psychiatrist and his social worker had said he was emotionally unstable. He'd been in juvie for truancy. But when they did his security check, it was all fine. Really? Radar technology was not like today where it's a secret. This was like one of the biggest secrets. Radar technology. It was up there with like the atom bomb and things like that, this technology at that time. It was protected. And they just went, and then he goes off to Russia and they just let him back in.
Sounds legit to me.
I'm completely on board.
Okay, so a little bit. There's loads more information on Lee Harvey Oswald. Should you want it, we just before coming live, I will say this. We said before coming live, just off if we to sort of concentrate on one element of this story, we could just do hours live stream on that alone. And as we sort of alluded to in the past, the generalizations when we do these streams on Mystery Machine and our sort of opinions and our take on it, we don't claim that they're an absolute documentary on every part of every single thing, because we could go for ages. I'm fairly sure about that one. I know Damian could, but where we'd end up if Damian went off on one, I shudder to think.
Don't,
because he is bonkers.
Jumping around a bit.
Damian. Stop it.
Come on, behave now.
When we go back to the other thing about how he got arrested, you know, I said earlier that the copper, Mr. Tippett,
JD Tippett,
saw him by this identification, which I consider to be completely inexplicable. How this chap saw him through the second, Mr. Brewer saw him through the second 6-story window and gave a decent. Then there's this Johnny Brewer, who when he saw him duck into this, he says he was a shopkeeper basically. He saw Oswald. Sort of, he says he ducked into the entrance alcove of his store. Yeah. Thought it was suspicious. Then saw him duck into the Texas Theatre. Thought that was suspicious. He saw him duck in without paying, sort of thing. So he decided to phone the police. The police then went in, turned the lights of the theatre up. Brewer pointed him out, and they arrested him. And Lee Harvey did not fight, even though he just shot one police officer. He gave in. He just they'd said he looked just dejected, like he'd just given up, sort of thing. That is, again, very strange. Why did this Brewer phone the police? Surely you would look at that and just go, that was weird. You wouldn't phone the police. And then the police...
Some people are busybodies.
Well, yeah, but then the police, even though JFK has just been assassinated a couple of miles away, they've got this report that a bloke has just gone into a theatre without paying. And they go, well, we'll be straight over. No messing around. He might have been the one that killed Oswald.
Did he? He must have done something you would have expected that would have linked it to the recent event that he was hearing about of the president being shot and suspicious behaviour around.
Not according to the identity. That's the police are just thinking we'll look into anything that's suspicious.
What gets me is that his identity was going about when the echo of the last gunshot was still echoing around the plaza. And he still had time to come out of the building, past everybody who knew that the president had been shot, and get in a bus. Go to the nearest bus stop and get on the bus and just travel back to his lodgings, which is that amazes me.
I've got a theory about what he was doing that day. But he went back to his lodgings, changed his jacket, and then went out again. Wouldn't you hide? Wouldn't you stay in your room? But I have a theory about where he was going, but we'll talk about that later.
Okay, well, no problem. Well, we'll move on to the Zapruder footage. So we'll rock a little bit of Zapruder love. Because we like that. So Abraham Zapruder. Okay, so yeah, the footage that I'll show you in a minute, famous footage of the assassination. I'm sure everybody's seen it, but we'd be remiss if we didn't at least show it. It was filmed by Abraham Zapruder on 8mm film, and it's a 22-second segment thereabouts. Obviously recorded the assassination of JFK. The film was bought by Richard Stolley from Time Life magazine, and he paid $50,000 for the legal printing of it, and then paid a further $150,000 for full ownership of it. And Stolly printed still images from the film, but did not print frame 313. Now, frame 313 is the most famous one, if you like, because that's the fatal headshot picture. And Stolly didn't want the film to be shown to the public, but he was overruled by Geraldo Riviera, who disagreed because he felt that the public had a right to know what had gone on. And it was shown on The Tonight Show, where it was a little bit distasteful, I suppose, but maybe they knew something we didn't. It was called The Execution of Kennedy when it was played on The Tonight Show. And interestingly, a guy that's sort of like the forerunner for the analysis of the Zapruder footage is a guy called Josiah Thompson. He was a graduate student in 1966, and he was the first person outside of the CIA to make serious forensic analysis of Zapruder's film of the assassination of President Kennedy. He's been obviously rendered in HD and all sorts of things since then that we all know about. But I'll play it. Can you say, am I still on the screen? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I'll play the footage. So this is the Zapruder footage.
And she's off.
Okay, I'll leave that as is for now. I'm not going to play it again. We've seen it. I'll stop that for now and bring us back up. Here we are. Good looking bunch of guys we are. So obviously massively famous video footage that, of course, there was other photographs taken, as I mentioned before, Mary Mormon and somebody else. Lots of other people come into play, don't they? Like Umbrella Man, the Dark Set guy. There's lots of different. There's so many. We might have to do a part 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 of this. We've got to be careful where we go with it, especially with these two. I normally pretty disciplined, but these two are totally off the nut. We'd be here for weeks. But there's a Zapruder footage. It's pretty well. In fact, I will show it again because there was a couple of points I want to point out, which obviously Damian and Jamie are more than aware of. But it's,
he says,
yeah, it's like, really, we're aware of it. Are you sure? Yeah. With that comment, you be spoiling us.
Yeah. So there are other videos on there as well, like the Orville Nix film, and there's a couple of others. But this is considered the one that we actually see everything. This is the one where we actually see the thing. But even though there is a gap in the recording, apparently.
Yes, there is.
Max Holland and Johan Rush found that there's at 132 there is actually a gap of a couple of seconds.
Yeah, you do see it there. Now, as he comes out, that's after the first shot's been hit, which has obviously hit him, come out of his throat, and then hit Governor Connolly. Apparently, you can sort of almost see Governor Connolly just before the fatal headshot. He looks like he's crying out in pain. To me, every time I watch that, it doesn't match up with when Kennedy reacts to being shot through the back of the neck, which exits its throat, and that's the one that allegedly hits Connolly. If you look at Connolly, he's still turning to his right and doesn't look phased as if he's been shot at all.
Well, magic bullet, hey? And the supposed path of the magic bullet, or was it more likely that it was another shot that hit him?
He's been waiting. It was because there is I don't know. I think he looks a bit in pain there.
Well, by his own testimony, he said he looked around because he heard something that he knew was a shot, but he hadn't been hit at that time. And that's one thing. That's what John Connolly said all the way up until his death. And that's something that just doesn't seem to match up for me. Do you know what I mean?
I think there's a few things in that video that don't look quite right. But again, it's old footage. It's old. It's an old camera. It's been things, but yeah. With the gap, Do you think that was purposeful? Because did he actually stop recording and start again? Or do you think the gap of only a couple of seconds was potentially took out on purpose?
I'm going to put it back up because that's a good point. Yeah, you sort of see the stagger there.
Yeah. Did something happen there that we're not supposed to see?
No, potentially.
Because some people have suggested that this video is actually faked. That Time magazine got hold of it. It then wasn't seen in public for some time, and then it sort of appeared, and maybe there's some fakery going on. And I've never personally believed that, because I don't think the technology existed, and obviously it was in private hands. But it would be very easy to cut something out if there was something there that needed to be removed.
Yeah, it's difficult to speculate, isn't it? But there could well be something in that 2 seconds.
We should also point out here as well where those handles are that you can see at the back of the vehicle. There is supposed to be 2 Secret Service agents stood there.
Yes, very good point.
Which would have potentially blocked the shot. They were ordered off just before the cavalcade started.
Yep, which is very, very strange. They're normal.
You can see them on the other vehicle.
Yeah, you can see him on the running board on the limousine behind, can't you? That's where Clint Hill is there. You can see him in the top left. That's Clint Hill, who ends up jumping onto the back of the limousine after Kennedy gets shot in the head.
There is actually another video before this of the 2 Secret Service agents that are supposed to ride on the back of the vehicle, like would be normal protocol, are ordered off by the head of the detail.
Yeah, they were, yeah.
You can see the one Secret Service agent sort of going,
he shrugs. What's
going on? Why do you want me to do that? And they were really confused. They were probably all hungover from the night before, apparently, as well. But that you can tell he's visibly confused by what he's being told to do.
It's anti-normal Secret Service procedures. Again, something you also see on 9/11 with Bush in the school full of kids. Just a little comparison to draw there.
Well, they actually spoke about this. Well, Hill did, as well as Kellerman and Greer. Greer's the driver, by the way, and Kellerman is the passenger, the guy nearest to us in the front. And Clint Hill, they're the 3 main, if you like, the 3 main agents that are involved in the story, are their testimonies of the 3 most famous ones. Clint Hill is on the running board at the top left of the picture. So you've got Greer driving the car and Kellerman in the passenger seat, for anybody who might be interested. I think you've also got to look at the mechanical composition of the camera. You know, is it likely to cause any kind of lag, and what kind of condition with the sprockets in? Are you going to get stagger on the film, you know, and stuff like that? I mean, I'm just playing devil's advocate there because I don't profess to know exactly, you know, the ins and outs of the models of that particular camera. I should have really looked into that, but
but it is a good point, and it's old technology. We know that the video was. You know, so yeah, there are elements of it that look odd. I think it looks odd when you see him grabbing his neck. I think it actually looks like bad CGI from like about 10 years ago. It's like the Matrix movie when that was one of the big first CGI fights, and it looks like a plasticine man when he's like fighting because it's CGI because they can't quite get it. Kind of looks a bit like that to me, but that wasn't remotely possible in the 60s. So it's not CGI, is what I'm saying. And it wouldn't make any sense to either because there was 600 witnesses.
Yes, the age of the footage just tend to lead me to believe that it's real footage. As to whether it's been doctored slightly with techniques available at that time, this missing 2 seconds you're on about, possible.
No, he's got a shattered. Remember, Governor Connolly's got a shattered left forearm and wrist. Yeah, that left forearm and wrist, he's moving about more than happily. They also described his wife, Nellie, dragging him down to the side, which helped his chest wound. Now, that's not happening there, but Kennedy's responding to being shot through the back of the neck, which exited through his throat. just every time I see it, it just doesn't seem to match up. And I know what you're saying, but it just seems like it's out.
Timing's not quite right, is it?
Yeah, it just it like when Kennedy gets, as soon as he comes back, it's like it's happening round about there, innit? He's reacting, and Connolly's turning around because he's heard something. I know what you say. Look, he's turning around to look at President Kennedy directly because he makes a comment which I've made a note of. And if you look now it's after he's been shot in the head that Connolly's been pulled down by Nelly.
Yep.
Good 2 or 3 seconds there that haven't quite add up on there.
It's just never made sense to me. That, do you know? I don't think I'm making it up. It just doesn't seem right. It's like, yeah, you see, his left arm's intact. He's turned around to President Kennedy. He's talking. He says something about I forget what he says. Then he gets hit. Now Nelly drags him down.
Yeah. So his reaction wasn't until the headshot, but by that point, depending on what you believe, there could have been multiple shots already fired that you would have heard and would have made you take that action sooner, perhaps.
Yeah, it just seems a little bit. I don't know. Just a. I don't think we need to keep playing that, do we? We're done with that one.
But shocking videos.
I suppose though, what was silencer capabilities like in the 60s in terms of if there were multiple shooters? Yeah, suppressors, because you could have had one shooter that was going to be the Patsy location where they used an unsilenced gun and then used silenced weapons from the other locations. In which case, how would you hear? I suppose you'd still hear the bullet fizzing past you at high velocity potentially and alert you to it. But
silencers do take a lot of the zip out of a bullet anyway.
They take the muzzle blast because what they do is they contain the gases because they're volumetric. So they contain the gases that are spent out by obviously the accelerants. It's not true gunpowder like it used to be. It's nitrocellulose accelerants that are used. And it's their interaction with oxygen what enables them to work the way that they do. And a volumetric silencer, the bigger it is, the more quiet, but it'll only tampen down the gases that are expelled from the muzzle when a round's fired off and the nitrocellulose has expanded from the bullet case. The supersonic crack of the bullet, that doesn't get silenced by anything because you no longer have control over the chemistry or the physics of it because it's no longer in the rifle or whatever. It's traveling through the air. It's breaking the speed of sound. I believe that these in this particular rifle around about 2,500 or something feet per second. Like something like a 200 grain bullet. So a ballistically quite a heavy bullet, quite heavy round. And at 2,000 speed of sound, roughly about 1070, 1080 feet per second. So it would have been easier to quieten the muzzle blast, but you're still going to get the supersonic crack of the bullet breaking the sound barrier.
You'd probably ask Jamie. You've been fired on, haven't you, with live rounds? Is it easy to locate what angle they're coming from?
We don't talk about things like that. But the other thing about silences, though, is that they do actually affect the accuracy and the muzzle velocity of the rifle. So a sniper wouldn't necessarily want to use a silencer. It would affect the shot,
right,
in quite unpredictable ways as well.
Unless, of course, it's been zeroed and it's calibrated for that. You get such a thing known as barrel harmonics. Obviously, excuse me, you're passing a metal object through a tube. It's oscillating. There's a frequency which it vibrates because it's under duress and it's been heated up.
Yeah.
So if the barrel harmonics aren't correct when you fit this silencer, like Jamie says, it could go anywhere at any time. It can clip the baffles on the way out of the silencer. There's lots of reasons why you might not want to use a silencer or a moderator. I've not personally seen, I'm not going to go into what, anyway, but I know that most of them can be massively effective, but you're going to hear the crack. You're going to hear the crack of that round zipping through the air. We're only going about 168 feet or 160 feet or something like that, I believe, from the 6th floor to when it hits Kennedy.
80 meters, wasn't it? This kill shot. Yeah. 83 meters, whatever that is in feet.
Not a huge distance, is
240 feet, is it? Something?
Rubbish. That's what it is. Rubbish.
It is odd that we'll talk about the shot quickly because I do have some quite strong feelings about it. he was rated as a marksman, Oswald.
Yes.
And he got a score 212, something like that,
Yeah.
in 53. In 59, he'd actually deteriorated. And shooting is a skill. It's a deteriorating skill as well. If you don't do it regularly, you get worse. It's a skill that you need to practice. Generally, shooters get worse as they get older as well. But so he was already getting worse. He was known regularly actually to be that his first shot was always pretty bad. He used to get red flagged quite a lot, which is basically when you take a shot and you miss the target completely, and then everybody has to stop. Red flags go up. Everyone has to stop and basically make sure that nobody's accidentally shot themselves in the elbow.
Yeah, known as Maggie's draws. Maggie's draws, it was known as, because the red flag would keep going up and down.
Yeah, definitely. So he was already known. So that would be congruent with what we've said there about his first shot that he completely bloody missed. But in theory, that first shot should have been the easiest.
That's also correct.
It's also hard to actually shoot a target that with this sort of accuracy that's moving away from you. It's easy to hit a target that's going from side to side. A target that's moving away from you is more difficult. But he missed, then hit reasonably close, and then hit bang on the money. I have a problem with that, in that, generally speaking, anybody that was actually a sniper is one shot, one kill. They would shoot perfectly well with the first round. Less accurate shooters tend to be off with the first. The second tends to be the best shot, and then the third normally a little bit not quite so good, but not far off. It's odd that he went completely missed. I mean, even missed the bloody car to pretty dead on to then the third shot that would have been much further away. And then you've also got the trees that are in the way for the third shot as well, which is potentially a problem. So, I mean, the fact that he was able to make that third shot, I find unlikely. I also find it odd that the magic bullet round, which we'll talk about in a bit, was a penetrative round. So it went through JFK, it went through Connolly, and then it embedded itself into Connolly's arm, bounced off bone. We'll talk about that more in a bit, I know. But so that would have had to be quite a highly dense round. High dense rounds penetrate. They go through things. Soft rounds, soft density rounds, mushroom when they hit hard objects. So they, as they hit the object, they flatten and they look like a mushroom. The idea being of that is they're really good kill rounds. So when a bullet goes in, it'll penetrate the skull, but then when it hits the inside of the skull, it hits it like a hammer. And this is what JFK was killed by. Why was he using different rounds? Why was he using different types of bullet? That seems incredibly odd that he would do that if the round that killed JFK came from the same weapon that actually was the first couple of shots.
You also got to take into account as well that different ammunition will perform differently in a rifle. If you use, say for instance, what you're saying, high density round is what would typically be known as like a full metal jacket or a copper coated lead core bullet. And a soft round would be either like a ballistic tip or polymer tip ballistic frangible round, or a lead nose soft point, or a dum round, whatever people want to say. The idea of soft rounds, if you like, is to dump all the ballistic energy inside the target with a massive temporal wound cavity, doing total disruption to tissue, but not penetrating and not coming through the other side. A completely different kind of round than what will be an FMJ. If you zero or any kind of firearm to shoot a particular kind of ammunition, it's zeroed for that ammunition.
Yeah.
If you stick another round through that of a different kind, the chances are it's no longer zeroed for that ammunition. And that it can even be said for a bullet that is exactly the same weight, because different types of bullets have different what's called ballistic coefficient, which is the ability to buck the wind, defy gravity, and be streamlined through the air, which is dependent upon bullet weight, bullet speed, and cross-sectional density. So there's a lot of things that come into it. So the likelihood of him just ramming a certain round through, shooting and hitting it, and then putting another one through and bingo, very, very unlikely.
Well,
it's
like
really
the
a lot.
trajectory arc completely changes when you've got a different type of round. It's very unlikely, and God knows why he had different rounds anyway. This was a guy that was a soldier. This thing, he should have known his stuff when it comes to weapons, and rifles, and he was using a box ammunition. He'd have known all this stuff. Is my point.
Yeah, I agree with that. You would expect him to know this, with being referred to as a competent marksman.
Mm-hmm. Just your basic training. I mean, you're not just from the basic, to use, you don't use different ammunition in the same rifle. You just don't. But the stuff that the sort of round that hit the first round was sort of like the sort of thing a hunter would use. Like you said, a full metal jacket designed to penetrate. You don't leave any debris. You don't leave any shrapnel in the animal. If you get headshot, boom, you can then eat the animal. The sort of round that then killed JFK was the sort of thing you designed to kill people. You don't use it for anything else, really. Because it fragments. Right, yeah. But it fragments it. You can't use it for hunting. Is my point. It's useless for hunting. It'd spoil the meat.
All you got to do is look at firing certain ammunition into ballistic gel and seeing the penetration qualities, the wound cavity, and how much it expands, the expansion properties, which is, as you said, mushrooming, or in the case of full metal jackets, they usually tumble as they lose speed when they hit the target. The keyhole, a lot of the time, they'll start to tumble and do a lot of damage, which is, I'm not going to go too much into it, firearms type stuff, but which is pretty much why they went from using 7.62 in NATO, 7.62 millimeter NATO, to 5.56. I mean, alongside Eugene Stoner wanting to propagate the use of the AR-15 and M16s in the wars in Indochina and so on and so forth. The change in ammunition was to wound people, because when a bullet hits and it tumbles, it does a lot of damage. It's bouncing about all over the place. But if you wound somebody, it takes two people to look after that one person. You've effectively took three people out of the battle rather than just the one. If you hit them with a 7.62, a 7.65, or a 6.5, as we're looking at in this instance, or whatever it is supposed to be, it's just going to zip and job done. The person's going to be dead ostensibly. But certainly mixing ammunition, I'm not wearing that. It just doesn't sound right at all. It just doesn't sit right.
Strongly suggest a second shooter to me.
Should we do the grassy knoll? Shall we do the grassy knoll?
Let's do it.
Yes, where everybody's attention has been pointed for many years.
This is one of the most famous things, isn't it? This is like the conspiracy holy grail, the grassy knoll.
It is.
If you hear the term grassy knoll, there's no other reference. It's about the assassination of JFK. I've never ever heard the phrase grassy knoll used ever to describe a grassy area.
I don't even know what a knoll is.
Apart from JFK assassination. Have you anybody else?
No.
Yes.
It's a small hill.
Okay.
Only ever once, Damian. I'm not being an ass. This is this is true. I've only ever heard it once, apart from JFK, and that is in the Moors murders, where the body of Pauline Reed and Leslie Ann Downey were found, was a place called Hollin Brown Knoll.
Okay, and that was a grassy knoll they were found on. Okay, I've never not heard of that, but I'll just that's interesting. It's very rare then.
It is very rare. I'm not going to give away where I live, but I live about 15 minutes away from that location, so that's always a very nice place to go and visit,
Number 3, Dias Road.
Yeah.
I don't know your address. I can't give it out, but if I knew your address, I would now be giving it out. Because I'm
telling everybody what you like.
Your phone number's 0793.
I do find it funny though, these videos of people.
I nearly gave my phone number out by mistake then. I nearly gave you my bloody phone number.
People do it, don't they? They accidentally give out their personal details on online, and then 20 minutes later they're being done by a SWAT team.
Yeah, fair enough.
Don't give out your personal information online. You're going to get swatted, or just 15 delivery companies show up. It's one of the two.
Yeah, it takes your chance, don't you? That's what happens there, lad. Okay, well, I don't even know what I'm talking about now. But what we were saying a little bit earlier is that several different people, lots of people reported gunshots or seeing things on the grassy knoll. So I'll start off before the my colleagues jump in, and so certain witness was in a really good position than anybody else to observe suspicious activity by the fence, this white picket fence, which is at the top of this grassy knoll, was a railway worker called Lee Bowers, who was perched in a signal box. So he was like he could see the area behind the fence, and this Bowers fella, I feel like I can call him that. This Bowers fella said that shortly before the shots were fired, he noticed two men standing near the fence, which his descriptions wasn't great, to be honest. But he says that one was middle-aged. I mean, that narrows it down, doesn't it? So one was middle-aged and fairly heavy set. So about 75% of the males in Texas at that time. But one was middle-aged and fairly heavy set, wearing a white shirt and dark trousers. The other was mid-20s. So there's your other 25% in either a plaid shirt or a plaid coat. And these men were the only two strangers in the area, he said. A bit of a weird comment, seeing as how the entire place was flooded with people because the president was driving around, but whatever. But he said that he knew all the other workers. Now, he also said that when the shots were fired, excuse me, when the shots were fired at the president, in the area where them two men were, there was a flash of light. And he said he couldn't identify it. But it made him feel like something was out of the ordinary and that it had occurred there. Now, this Lee Bowers fellow was questioned by the Warren Commission, but when he was trying to give his evidence, he was cut off midway through when he started to describe something being out of the ordinary. And the lawyer that was asking him all these questions, like quickly check, where have I gone? Oh, there we go. The lawyers that were asking quickly changed the subject when he started to describe that something wasn't quite right. You know what I mean? Something wasn't quite right. So that's one witness testimony from the I nearly said Holland Brown Knoll, from the grassy knoll. Do you want to dive in, guys, with anything?
Well, like Gordon Arnold is also an interesting witness, and they said he had military experience. He at one point says he heard that.
Yeah,
of something going past his ear, which he described as being a rifle shot. And I know when the Mary Mormon photo was sort of enhanced, somebody showed him a picture of this, and I've actually seen the footage of him seeing the enhanced photo.
Yeah,
he either deserves an Oscar because he's the greatest actor that ever lived, or he was shocked by what he'd seen, and it actually it flooded back all these memories. He burst into tears. He basically broke down when he was shown the photo. And he described that of half seeing this thing and having the bullet potentially going flying past his ear. Is that potentially where the third fatal shot came
Is
from?
that the interview where he says, "Oh, I'm the only one person that he was the one that said he claimed he stole his camera."
Yeah.
He got kicked by him, stole his camera.
Yeah.
I think that screams crisis actor in that documentary. To be quite honest,
It's a very good point, that I think.
Yeah, he's a good actor then.
Yeah, but when you start getting somebody crying in a documentary about how it all happened, it starts making you be able to separate, doesn't it, skepticism out of the equation because of you're suddenly emotionally invested. It's a good way that they try and lie to you generally, isn't it, to get you to believe the lie. They get someone to cry and get you emotionally invested first, then throw the lie at you, and then you're not as skeptical immediately afterwards. I read that documentary was all the two scientists in it as well. It was supposedly the scientists that found Badgeman.
Yeah.
Supposedly they were just paid actors as well for the documentary, and they were.
It's all about selling the ploy. It's trying to get affirmation for the narrative that you're trying to put across, and one way of doing it is to raise emotion. You see it when you hear people speaking. Is factual or emotional sentences tend to end with like a down kind of cadence at the end of it. When you get an upward one, it's suggestive, as if to say, are you with me, right? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Can you tell what I mean? You know, so when you rise up like that, you sort of hear it in the cadence of people's voices as well. So now our mate Gordon Arnold, good point there about that, because he said he tried to film from the railway overpass, but was like waved away by somebody who said they were a Secret Service agent and showed them his badge. And so he moved to a dirt mound in front of the picket fence on the grassy knoll. where he filmed the motorcade as it went down Elm Street. And he said he described 2 shots being fired over his shoulder from behind, and then he said that he hit the dirt after feeling the first just over his left shoulder. And then he indicated that he remained lying down for the duration of the shooting until he was confronted, because it's in my notes, by 2 policemen who confiscated his film, thanks Damo, and ordered him to leave the area. He suggested that he'd been afraid to report the incident due to claims of peculiar deaths of witnesses to the assassination. Now, Dallas police officer, seriously, now police officer Joe Marshall Smith sort of backed this up because he said, I got to make this statement and I feel awfully silly doing it. But after the shot, I pulled my pistol from my holster and I thought it was silly and I don't know who I'm looking for, so I put it back. But just as I did, I bumped into a man who showed me proof that he was a Secret Service agent. He saw me coming with my pistol and right away showed me who he was. He saw his badge. So on the grassy knoll, you've got a police officer who's saying, well, Gordon Arnold was shunned away by somebody claiming to be a Secret Service agent, waving the badge around. And a police officer, Joe Marshall Smith, y'all, who's also saying that, you know, he was heading to the scene. In fact, the last photo that I've shown you, I don't think it's him, but you can see there that they're responding, running up to the grassy knoll, and there's a police officer heading in that direction, not to the Texas Book Depository store, to the grassy knoll. In that photo there. So takes, guys.
Earlier,
They've never identified.
40 or more witnesses said that the shot came from the grassy knoll. 40 or more.
Yeah.
Which is odd. It's difficult to get your head around that many people. There's only, like I said earlier, there's about 600 people in the thing, and 40 to 50 of them believed that's where the shot came from. That's a pretty big, decent percentage. No, it seems odd.
I think it was probably quite a confusing event with multiple shooters from multiple locations, and that's why the public didn't really get much right, because it was highly confusing and multiple shooters, and I think that
tend to be pretty quick. And there's a chap, Dale Myers, who did a computer analysis of this image afterwards, and he did suggest that for somebody to be stood there with a rifle, they would have to be 12 feet tall.
Yeah.
But I would argue, if you've never heard of a box or something, you know, they'd have wrecked this. If this was an assassination attempt, they'd have wrecked this a few times before, and they'd have walked up and gone, "Oh, that fence is pretty high. We'll bring a box." It's not that complicated to really dismiss that as potentially irrelevant. You know.
No, I think you're raising a good point there. You know, any assassin. Not that I know any assassins or anything like that, but any assassins worth their salt would take all these things into account. This is another guy here, this witness, and I don't care whether he's telling the truth or not. I just think he's got a great name. Tosh Plumley.
Oh, that's a good one.
Tosh Plumley, yeah. Our Tosh. And he got asked the question, can you tell me exactly where you were standing in Dealey Plaza? And he said, yes, I can. We were standing approximately 100 feet east of the triple underpass on the south knoll, up on the hill, about 5 feet in line with the light posts. And he said, okay, so could you tell me how many shots were fired that day? Now, he said, as I recall myself, I'd say 4 or 5. That's what I recall. Now, I've heard that there were more. I've heard that there were less. So the interviewer then said, could you tell the direction of those shots? And Tosh, our Tosh, he said, I couldn't tell the direction of the shots, but however, my memory is that I feel like a shot went over my head or to the left of us, and I'm familiar with gunfire. Also, when we left the area, we got a taste of gunpowder when we went over the railroad tracks, which would have been south of the north grassy knoll. So gunpowder, the smell of gunpowder and shots coming from that area. There isn't a lot of this kind of stuff going on at the Texas Book Depository store, is there, guys? Nobody's smelling it out there. Look at the density of the crowds in the photos and in the videos that anybody can find online. The sheer amount of people that are stood on the pavement there outside the Texas Book Depository. Big, thicker crowd density. The odd few people dotted around, the babushka woman, umbrella man, so on and so forth, yada, yada. Yeah, babushka woman, you know, but these people are smelling the smell of gunpowder, but nobody further up the street is where these shots are emanating from. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
My only issue. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the only thing we haven't really mentioned was the Secret Service also the slowing down at the end of the footage where they almost grounded to a complete halt, almost on a cue, as if that perhaps if the earlier part of the mission hadn't gone to plan, then the Secret Service were to slow the car down to an almost stop, so the final shooter in position could make the final headshot kill shot.
Yeah.
And I believe that happened around the grassy knoll area. Whether the shooter was on the grassy knoll, whether he's hidden somewhere else out of sight around the area, there's ideas he might have been hidden in the storm drain, and that the final shot came from the storm drain.
And back to the hobos in a minute, because there's a brilliant theory about one of these hobos.
These tramps. All right. Well, I'll drop that for now. We'll come back to that in a second.
I was going to say there's a great theory about that. But
we'll come to them in a second. I just want to, just want to say this is where the umbrella man and the thick dark set guy come in. Is this like slow the car down, and because there's witnesses that say when this umbrella man opened and closed his umbrella rather a few times. And then the other guy, the dark set guy, that's probably his name. It's on his birth certificate. That's what he's actually called, Dark Set Guy Smith. But he's raised his hand in the air, so the umbrella man's doing it. And I'm not going to do that motion again. It looks wrong. But umbrella man's like opening and closing his umbrella rapidly. It's another name for it. Yeah. He's opening and closing his umbrella rapidly in response to this. I'm absolutely loving it. And in response to this, the dark set guy, poor man, he raises his arm, and the limousine, the presidential limousine, does slow down. Allegedly, it did slow down. So I find that interesting.
One of the people in the vehicle, one of the senators, I think the guy next to Greer, I think, I forget his name as well there. He said that he felt the car almost came to a stop.
The guy next to Greer, do you mean the Secret Service agent?
I'm not sure he's in it. I think it was one of the senators in the second vehicle, actually.
All right, okay.
I've got his notes. If you go back to one of my other videos, I name him, but I've forgotten his name now. But he says he definitely felt it slowed. Yeah, exactly. But he says the vehicle slowed, and he said it came to almost come to a complete stop. We talk about William Greer later, though, because we'll talk about William Greer later.
Yes, we are. We're going to talk about what the secret agents, Secret Service agents, said they saw. Yeah. Well,
my main problem with the grassy knoll being the death shot coming from it, though, is that I don't believe the death shot came from in front of him. I know he went back and to the left from the JFK movie. So they said he was shot from the bullet hitting the front. I personally don't believe he was. I believe he was shot in the back of the head. And like I said, it was a low density round that then hit the skull, which the skull as his skull exploded. The force of that motion is what put his head back. I don't believe the round that killed him at least come from the grassy knoll. But if this was me and I was going to set up an assassination attempt, I would definitely have somebody on the grassy knoll in case I missed.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, that's what I was saying about it's almost like it's been planned in stages. There's sections. I mean, why is there a man with an umbrella on the middle of a hot sunny day? It just doesn't make sense. The only reason there's a man with an umbrella there, right, is because he's signalling to everybody in the area that's part of a team planning something. They're planning a mission. And he's a signal man for it. It's obvious. You just need to look at it like that.
There's also images, isn't there, of a guy with a massive radio.
Yes.
He puts it in his back pocket, and he does speak to Umbrella Man just after everything happens. Umbrella Man sits down, and this guy goes and sits next to him, and they share a few words. But they did identify Umbrella Man quite a few years later, and he says he was protesting. He said it was a protest, a Neville Chamberlain type protest. Apparently, this really obscure reference. I mean, JFK would have been going past, going, Neville Chamberlain. Oh.
That's the first thing that would have flashed into American president's head, isn't it?
He thought that JFK was sort of giving in to the Russian threats, and so that was his protest. If it was his protest, he's an idiot. For me,
agreed.
I think he was there for a signalman, but also I think he was there to assist the sniper. I think that whenever you're doing a shot like this, particularly on a moving target, you want to know where a fixed point is. It helps you sort of like triangulate the shot, and also a fixed height. And I just think that it was a signal. I don't think and it's a fluid situation as well. So I think there's probably 2 or 3 spotters in the plaza. There's this guy with a radio. Somebody was deciding to go whether we were going to go or not. They weren't going to use radios because they're not the most reliable things in the world in the 1960s. So I think they went go. And as soon as he put that umbrella up, that was the signal for the sniper to.
I think they probably were using radios, and they perhaps were coordinating shots from multiple positions, which is why people also didn't know how many shots were fired. I think they might have been doing that as well
Yeah,
to
they would
limit the amount of shots that were heard.
My point is, what they wouldn't do, they wouldn't rely on the radios, because if you're killing a president, you can't mess this up.
Mm-hmm.
So what you do is you have I
think they were using radios, but had the signal man there as the backup, or you know, the physical in case the radios don't work on the day. They've got a backup. Yeah,
and it gives you that fixed point where he was stood would have been planned, sort of thing. So like standing there.
I mean, you've still got people using semaphore when long after radio has been invented. So still visual signaling, very much in use on aircraft carriers, so on and so forth. So yeah, absolutely, I can get on that one.
Redundant systems always have a redundant plan, sort of thing. Plans on plans. You know, say about poor preparation.
Prevents prior preparation and planning prevents piss poor performance.
Yes, the 7 Ps, as they say.
But that is my only issue with the grassy knoll incident, really, is that I don't believe the kill round come from there.
Yeah, so they're like an enhanced photo or an enhanced image. You just, you know, anything that's been enhanced in the last, well, at least 20 years, much more than that in photographic laboratories, but at least at a grassroots level, your average guy in the street, your layman, anything in the last 20 years at a layman, if you like, type of level, you can't trust. You've got to be careful, haven't you, with images? You've just got to be careful with the photos. However, here we go. Let's because we sort of mentioned Badgeman, but another famous image, enhanced and colorized. But you know, I'm always obviously we're doing the paranormal investigation thing. I'm obviously always aware of you know, pareidolia, apophenia, various things, you know, your matrixing and stuff, and you can pull out whatever kind of images you want if you choose to, depending upon the filters that you use and which areas you wish to highlight. I will say that, but that's we're
really good at seeing shapes and things as well, aren't we? As humans, you know, you can look at a random shape and see faces and things. And I sometimes be looking at my carpet and go, "Oh, it looks like a face." It's not. It's just a random few little bumps.
Yeah, you drove to deal with associating certain things with for the fight or flight thing, isn't it? It's when the amygdala going into overdrive and stuff like that. You need to know if it's a threat or if it's a friend. So associate certain images with things you can relate to, so you can justify whether you need to leg it or stand there and fight. And faces is one of the you know, we, like you said, we're human beings. We're going to find faces in things. So, but that's a famous image of Badgeman. I'm not wearing it, because to the right of Badgeman, as you look at that picture, you've got World War I Tommy from the trenches man, if you really want to call him that. To the left, you've got oil worker YMCA man that never made it onto the videos, haven't you? You know, you got where do you draw the line? I mean, that's supposed to be a puff of like gun smoke. It looks cotton wool. You can make it anything, can't you?
Yeah.
And that doesn't look. You look at the image there across the top of the wall where the picket fence was, and it's not straight. It's not true. I don't know. I'm not wearing that one myself.
I'm more interested by the eyewitnesses than by the image. I don't think the image really tells us anything. The eyewitnesses are interesting. I don't always trust eyewitnesses, particularly in crisis situations. One of the first things your brain does in a crisis situation is like shut down your short-term memory processing and you focus on where you think the threat is and you ignore everything else. That's why eyewitnesses are so useless in you know, violent incidents sort of thing. But
well,
apart from the sorry, go on, Dave.
No, go on, Damian.
Just to say, apart from the people that the media seemed to interview after 9/11, that knew exactly how it happened, told us it was all due to structural failure, and knew that within about 5 minutes of seeing both the towers collapse. Brilliant people that knew all of this immediately.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, NIST already had a 750-page document ready to release on the same day, didn't they? About why it happened.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they
You
did.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's good. That's good work.
7 in a few weeks.
Yeah, you know it. And well, before we move on to the magic bullet thing, I just want to say there was a study published by in a journal called Helios. I don't know it, so I'm not going to pretend to. That sort of like corroborates a lot of what you've said regarding the headshot. Anyway, I mean, I know, I understand the physics of why his head's moved the way it has when it's been hit. But a guy called Nicholas Gnarly, if you're out there, Nicholas, peace out, brother. But Nicholas Gnarly, I'm going to call him Nick. I don't laugh too much. He's a senior research scientist at IMSG. I don't even know what that is, but again, keep rocking, Nick. And he created a model of the mechanics of the gunshot wound, so we could explain where the bullet come from. I'm going to posit an hypothesis that it came out of a gun, but I'm no expert. Now, when Gnarly studied the Zapruder film, he noticed that the president's head snapped forward at the moment that the bullet hit the skull. You can see that when you watch the Zapruder film. It does do that. Now, he hypothesized. I just wanted an excuse to say that word. So I'm going to say it again. He hypothesized that basically he was trying to say that the president had been shot from behind. It was proved the fact that the president had been shot from behind because of the snapping forward of the head under the impact of the round. And plenty of information about the crime has been public for years, and he's drew from that pool of information just like we all have. But to get all this big massive collection of data to create a model of the physical processes of the gunshot wound, you've obviously got the autopsy and all the angles during the Warren Commission of where the shots were taken from, and so on and so forth. Now, this Gnarly fella, our Nick, I'm going to call you Nick. He took his model from things like this and taking the mass and the speed of the bullet and all the measurements into account and so on. He combined that information with the shutter speed of the film that documented the shooting. I like it, Nick. I like the way you rock, baby. It confirmed that his theory, and it shows that it's unlikely that the president was shot from the grassy knoll in front of him, because he says the president's reactions just after the projectile impact, did you hear that, Damo? Were physically consistent with a gunshot wound caused by a high-energy Carcano military rifle bullet fired from the vicinity of the Texas School Book Depository. Yeah, when the president was shot, he says that Kennedy's head exploded. Well, we know that, as the film so graphically shows, and his model shows that the wound wasn't where the bullet exited, but where it entered. You can see that on the autopsy photos. There is a little hole in the scalp, and it demonstrates that a temporary cavity, we know this, soft tissue injury, formed inside the president's soft tissue as the momentum and kinetic energy of the bullet smashed into his skull, causing his head to snap forward. And soft point bullets are also unlikely. He's saying that dum-dums and soft point, soft core bullets and stuff are unlikely, because not only were they never recovered, but the movements of Kennedy's head just suggest that it was congruent with a shot from the back. And as Jamie said earlier, we've got Oliver Stone to thank for all that back and to the left, back and to the left, back and to the left kind of stuff. That's not actually what
I would say that there's
identifying
where the round came from, though, is incredibly difficult as well, because the round will change direction when it hits anything hard. But that doesn't mean it can't come from the front. It can't. Well, the grassy knoll, I think, would have been at about 40 degrees around the point the kill shot. So it's not quite in front of him. It's to the right.
Are you on about from where Oswald was situated? Yeah, the grassy knoll in relation to Oswald. Is that what you're saying?
No, the grassy knoll in relation to JFK.
So it would have been. Yeah, you're rocking something like
to
that.
the right.
Yeah, it would have been, as the president looks out of the windscreen of the limousine, it's forward and to his right. Yeah.
But I would argue so that second the headshot wound could have come from anywhere, roughly 45 even more degrees behind him. There are 2 or 3 buildings that could have easily come from, and it's very difficult to judge just from the video, but it would have come from behind him. And I would argue this well, that if I was planning this, it's what I'd want to do. I'd want somebody up quite high, taking pot shots and making a lot of noise, the person that I actually then want to actually get the kill shot, I would have in roughly the same position, so that the body fits the evidence, sort of thing. So nobody's going to look at it and go, well, this bullet wound's from the front. No, you want to know the bullet wound's roughly congruent with what we know to be true.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a bit of that with the official story? Because of the basically, didn't in the official story, one of the 3 bullets have had to have done a U-turn to be both enter and exit through the same hole?
Oh, we're on that one. We're on that one.
Go magic bullet next. That's
we're moving on to the magic bullet in about 2 minutes. That's where we're headed next. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I think that kind of, you have to have that with this conversation with which direction did the kill shot come from? Because in the official story, it's saying that bullet's doing a U-turn. Well, no.
You've also got the fact that the only exact science regarding ballistics is the trajectory that you work out depending upon bullet weight and velocity. From there, everything else goes out of the window. Everything. As soon as that bullet leaves that rifle muzzle or pistol, whatever, and hits anything, then the trajectory can be anywhere.
Yeah,
little irregularities in the surface of the bullet can cause it to deform. You could hit the same place with the exact same bullet, but because the bullet's just a tiny bit different, and you get striations and so on and so forth, can mean it can ricochet in a completely different direction. Because I've heard somebody say, "Well, hang on a minute, the president's head's hit by a certain bullet." It then ricochets when it's only gone through a small part of bone, really. I mean, you look at it, it's what smashed the occipital region, gone in through the parietal, but smashed the occipital region of the skull, I believe, hasn't it? The right occipital region. And so it's gone through a tiny bit of bone, and it's been deflected and shot off out to the right and all this kind of thing. Yet, the magic bullet, I beg your pardon, has managed to go through his neck. It's then managed to go through somebody else. It's then managed to ricochet off this and go through an arm, go through a leg, but it's traveled in a completely straight path, which the Warren Commission allegedly were trying to go down the route of, let's just go to we'll go to the magic bullet now as good a time as any. Let's just do it.
I did see a murder once with a guy. It was they tried to shoot him in the back of the head with a 22, and the bullet came out his armpit.
Yeah.
It's just mad how that happened.
No, yeah, there's just some crazy ricochets that can occur off of bone, and yeah, it is difficult once it has had contact with something relative density upwards. Then yes, they do change direction. But the odds on the magic bullet's trajectory doing what they tried to tell us it did are so slim. It's far more likely there's a second bullet.
When we did 9/11 video, we talked about the passport that was found in perfect condition, that identified the thing, and it was forged in just the right way that we knew it was Al Qaeda, and I called it the magic passport. You remember the amount of grief I got for that? I kept on pointing out it's in reference to the magic bullet, to JFK. Well, what's that got to do with the bullet? Oh, come on.
I agree. It was a great magic passport. It is a magic passport. It shouldn't exist. It shouldn't be there.
I shouldn't have had to explain that shit.
Some people don't understand satire, brother. That's the issue. Okay.
It is a very British thing, isn't it? I suppose satire, sarcasm. It's not as well received, is it?
Yeah, that would have been my choice of word as well. Would be received. It doesn't stop us doing it as Brits, though, does it?
No, it doesn't.
And as you look at that, you lovely people in the side chat and anybody else who might watch this video in the future, because this is where it's happening right here, right now. Even if you're in the future watching this, consider yourself a time travel, which segues me onto looking at the other stuff that Mystery Machine have done. We've dealt with time travel. What did we deal with time travel?
No,
you'll have to travel forward into the future.
2 hours.
We just wasted a little bit of time for a bit.
Really. An argument around the grandfather paradox in the episode. No,
just confused ourselves.
But we like doing that kind of thing. Now that picture there, you lovely bunch of coconuts, that's the magic bullet. That one right there, you see it? Yes, it's not a really crap snooker cue. It is a magic bullet. Now The reason that I know that was bad. That the reason that it's called the magic bullet is because if you look at it, it's completely intacto. Yes, I speak many languages, mainly gibberish, but that is completely intact. As you on the face of it, it looks like it's intact. Now this has hit President Kennedy. It's gone through the doodah on the back of his neck. I forget which vertebrae. I beg your pardon. It's come out at his Adam's apple area. It's then hit Governor Connolly in the back. It's exited, like piercing the top of his lung. It's come out just underneath his nipple. It's then smashed into his wrist, smashing his radial bone into 8 pieces, and then it's gone into his thigh. Now it's done all this. Are you listening? It's done all this, and it's barely. I'm just making sure they're awake. It's barely been touched. It is what we're led to believe. So
it was just
there's a couple
on a gurney in the hospital, just sat there.
Now, I'm going to give you the rundown before these two get hold of it, because these two are like tiger sharks. I'm more like a goldfish. I forget things after 3 seconds. So you got a little bit of a list before I get my head chewed off, because this is the alleged list anyway. Okay, so this is what the magic bullet's done, and then what the Warren Commission added information about what the magic bullet done. So basically, the magic bullet, ballistically, it arced very slightly while traveling 189 feet in a downward angle of 19 degrees. I feel better knowing that. It impacted, then entered President Kennedy 2 inches to the right of his spine, in his neck. It damaged the president's first thoracic vertebra, found it. After passing through the neck, the bullet exited President Kennedy's throat at the center line below the Adam's apple. It then traveled 25.5 inches between President Kennedy and Governor Connolly. It impacted and entered Governor Connolly's back just below and behind his right armpit, creating an elliptical wound, indicating that the bullet was fired from an acute angle, or that the bullet was tumbling, having hit something on its way in, which would make sense because allegedly it hit Kennedy. It then completely destroyed 5 inches of his 5th right rib bone as it smashed through his chest interior. It exited slightly below his right nipple, creating a 50mm sucking air blowout chest wound. It then slowed to 900 feet per second, which made it then become subsonic. So it slowed to 900 feet per second and entered through Connolly's right upper outside wrist. It broke his right radius wrist bone at its widest point, depositing metal fragments that he had until the day he died. It exited the palm, or the inner side of Connolly's wrist. By this time, it slowed to 400 feet per second and entered the front side of his left thigh. It's buried itself shallowly into Connolly's left thigh muscles. It's then fell out at Parkland Hospital, perhaps when Connolly was undressed. It's landed on Connolly's gurney, and then it was discovered by hospital engineer Darrell C. Tomlinson after it rolled into view after Connolly's gurney was bumped. So that's what the magic bullet, that's the flight path or the journey of the magic bullet. Now, the Warren Commission, before I pass it through to the tiger sharks, I know what you two are like, is that it had no thread striations, which are fine lines etched into copper encased bullets, or full metal jacket bullets that we were talking about earlier, where the sides, the rifling or the lands leave, it's almost like a fingerprint for a bullet, really. And these striations will contain clothing threads when the bullet first penetrates clothing, even though the pressure that goes before the bullet is normally the one that makes the initial entry point, not the actual physical bullet itself. But these striations would they would contain threads and so on. Secondly, it was marked with no blood. Thirdly, it had no human tissue on it. It also had no pieces of clothing attached to it. Apparently, it had only lost 1.5% of its original average weight, which is usually measured in grains. Most bullets will deposit 25%, and some of them even more when they impact a target. That's what they do. And it had a composition that was consistent with the composition of the metal fragments recovered from Connolly. So it doesn't make any sense apart from the fact that it's the same kind of bullet that would suit the metal fragments that were found in Connolly. Okay, so I'll pass it over to the nutcases. Go.
You keep saying there's metal fragments found in Connolly.
That's what they say.
That bullet?
That's
where
what
on that bullet has any metal fragments been removed? And I'll tell you, I've seen rounds that have been shot into water that are less damaged than that round. it's just a nonsense from beginning to end. There's no way anything that bullet did anything. It just looks like a tampon.
I suppose the real question is who found the magic bullet? Because I imagine it was found by somebody conspicuous in a very obvious place. Sorry, in the hospital, like the magic passport.
I'm sure it was found by just like somebody could, but it would have been left in the movies. And
it was a plan. That's what I'm about. It was a plan.
Like I said,
but they need to find it because it tags you to the again, it tags Harvey and to Lee Harvey Oswald, doesn't it? So, but
the magic bullet was discovered by hospital engineer Darrell C. Tomlinson. He found it on the gurney, apparently.
Okay, don't you?
Yeah, I suppose exactly.
Passport, you need someone innocent to find it.
Well, yeah, I don't know who found the magic passport, but yeah, you ideally that would be what you want. You want
the I can't even look at that now without seeing it as a tampon. So thanks for that, Jay.
Yeah, it does resemble that. Yeah.
Naughty.
As soon as you put that one up, I'm just immediately thinking tampon. But yeah, so
right. So I will put that up. No. The magic bullet. Now, sorry, Jay.
How unlucky as well. One thing to get shot 3 times. One person got shot 3 times by one bullet. It went in his back, out his chest, in through his wrist, out his wrist, and then into his thigh.
Correct.
You think about the trajectory of where the shooter and that shot, and like any slight body movements just throws that 3-foot like hit through your shoulder, through your chest, through your arm, which I'm assuming would have to be sat probably on your thigh,
pretty much.
Probably from the angle from the book depository. The chances of it hitting you 3 times like that's got to be pretty slim.
Well, it's only happened. You see, you've made a good point there, Damo, because it has only happened once in history. This time, that's how rare it is, brother. That's how rare it is. It's only ever happened once.
And the little thing knows that the Connolly actually then died a week later because he was struck by lightning 3 times in the same day.
Yeah, there you go.
Unlucky bastard, man.
Yeah, he took up golf.
I just said that's not true. So
I figured you were lying when you said 3 times.
Careful. No, all the Wikipedia experts will be going. He didn't die playing golf at all. He wasn't hit by lightning.
A lot of people have ended up dead close to this story.
A lot of people have woke up dead. You look at that picture there, because I know that you're out there. I can see you. I know you're out there, you people. I can see the chat. Now, if you look at that, that is the only sort of deformity of the said magic bullet, is the slight deformation at the base of the bullet, where obviously you can see the copper casing, you can see the lead core. I just like saying core, but that's the only kind of like deformity that we see on that. Now, before I let loose the dogs of tiger sharks, that is what, well, the film JFK would lead you to believe that the flight path that the magic bullet took.
Not true.
When you watch the film, and what a lot of people have said is where they thought Governor Connolly was sat in relation to President Kennedy would mean, as you can obviously tell by that, is that just a piece of strawberry spaghetti? I don't know what we're looking at there, but it looks like it's hit him in the back, and then it's flew out. It's done the Yui, as Damian so eloquently put it. He's done the Yui, a mid-air Yui. And then it's done all that kind of thing, Damian.
Well, no, that's not quite a U-turn. I think when I was referring to the U-turn before, I was more referring to on the autopsy report. The medical professional that did the autopsy had to basically state that one of the bullets would have had to have had an entry and exit wound that was the same, and did a U-turn inside JFK to actually, to make his autopsy make sense.
Yeah, the bullet tracked it. Then that's the one what hit him in the neck, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's the one that hit him in the neck. Because a lot of people argue it was a frontal shot, and there was actually a bullet hole in the windscreen.
We're going on to that. We have got that. Yeah. We're all prepared here, everybody.
Well, I mean, the truth is about this though is that Connolly wasn't sat there. Is the problem as well? That he was sat. The seating was lowered and to the left,
of Kennedy,
because it's a specially built car, the Cadillac. I want to say Cadillac.
Yeah, so Kennedy's Kennedy's
Is it
up against the edge of the vehicle, and his seat's inset slightly into the vehicle, which
it's so
puts
that you
him.
can see JFK. That's why it's positioned like that, so you can see whoever's on the back seat better. So the person in front is lower and slightly off.
Well, it's a position of authority as well, isn't it? That's why, you know, even officers in the military, they're allowed to sit in the passenger seat up front if they want, but no, they sit at the back alone. It's a status thing as well, isn't it? So absolutely, that limousine, Cadillac, onion bargee, whatever it is, was designed to amplify and accentuate the fact that the element of status, and that it's the president riding around in the vehicle.
So yeah, the magic bullet doesn't look as magic in that.
Yeah, but I'm just trying to think of the angle of the shot. If you think about the shot, and it's supposedly coming from the book depository, isn't it? Which is 6th floor. You've got a relatively high angle of inclination. If you think about the gap between Kennedy and the gentleman who shot Connolly that got shot, Connolly entered his back as well as it after entering JFK's back and coming out of his chest.
Coming out of
how has the elevation managed to drop so low that it's gone in the back of Connolly, out his chest, but then suddenly the elevation of the bullets dropped really low to go through his wrist that's on his left knee and then into his left thigh as well? It's almost like there isn't enough time for the elevation drop for that for the wrist part of Connolly being hit compared to. Do you see what I mean?
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, Connolly is sat lower. Is one thing I say, but also I think when a bullet hits soft tissue, it can change trajectory.
It could be diverted, so maybe it changed inside his body and came out with a different angle from the the angle that it came out was different. Okay, all right.
I agree with you actually that I don't think the ascension. I think from a 6th story, it would be a much higher trajectory. Like I said, I would expect that bullet to go through his neck and basically hit Connolly in the arse.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
It's the shot. It's been worked out that the angle that it was at when it hit in relation to where the motorcade was at 19 degrees, 168 feet at 19 degrees, a declination. So 19-degree declination over 168 feet from the 6th floor of the Texas Book Depository. When you look at it like that,
but then you've got to remember the vehicle was moving. I've just thought. Yeah. Because the vehicle's moving, you've also got to bring that into play, and that changes things a lot.
When you look at the fact that that bullet's going 2,250 feet per second, and the car's moving at about 5 or 6 miles an hour.
It's not as important at the slow speed when the kill shot came in, but it was probably more important when it was slightly higher speed when the first shot came in. But also, going back to your point before, Dave, as well, if this was the supposed first shot and he'd just been struck Connolly through the back, out the chest, through the wrist, and through his thigh, I'm pretty sure I'd have been ducking in the footwell.
Yeah.
Like instantly. That hot lead feeling. Bang, bang, bang.
Yeah.
My head using my wife as a shield.
Yeah. Anything to stay alive at that point, it's fight or flight, isn't it? That you realise you're being shot at because you've been shot. I don't know how long that takes to realise, but I don't know. It just, it brings me back to that, and it doesn't. I don't know. The footage doesn't seem like he knows he's been shot, Dave. Does it? After that
mate.
Shot?
I'm glad it's not just me seeing it, but you sort of know. I forget which frame number it is now, but I'm not going to play it again because we don't need to keep seeing it. It's pretty depressing footage. But when it ducks behind that sign, you sort of get a sense. You can sort of see Kennedy's head sort of move because you're just seeing the top of head, and it's like that looks like a reaction to something happening. A couple of frames later, they come out from behind that board, and he's raising his hands up to his throat with his elbows really high, like kind of a bleak manner. Connolly's turning round to look at Kennedy over his right shoulder. He's turning around to look at what I've got what his testimony somewhere. I'm struggling to find it now.
Yeah, he turned to say something, didn't he? But
he did turn to say something to Kennedy because they were both like military veterans. They knew what the sound of rifle fire was. And he was saying something like, they're shooting at us with rifles or something like that. I forget. But there's a long gap. If you get hit, you don't really get a massive choice in how you react to it. Now, I've not been shot, and I'm not pretending to have been shot, but I'm fairly sure it's going to sting.
You'd actually be surprised when people get shot and don't know they've been shot until they look.
Is it like one of those when, like, within, when you, they say until you've looked at it, you don't know you're injured, but then the pain starts as soon as you've seen the injury.
It's the same with stabbing. Sometimes it severs the nerve endings, so you don't necessarily know. You know something's happened because you've been hit and
adrenaline.
Your adrenaline starts going as well. But it's oh, we've lost him.
We've lost Dave. Okay.
We'll have to wait for him to come back. He's got control of the video.
Let's hope that he comes back and he takes control over again.
There he is.
There we go.
Hey.
I don't know what happened there. I got booted out on my own stream for some reason.
Momentary
Wi-Fi. We can't end the stream. We'd have to stay here forever.
Hell, we're going on with that one. But the thing is Connolly turns around and describes being hit. He knew when he was hit. You have raised a good point, and that is true. And I don't want to go too much segueing or off into rabbit trails because that's Damian's job. But I don't want to do it too much. But it's well known in the Middle East and insurgents and stuff like that being hit with these smaller caliber rounds multiple times and still carrying on doing what they're doing because they popped up on adrenaline or whatever else they're taking, but they don't even know they've been shot. So they're just cracking on. It's not dropped them. They've not felt it. So it is a good point what you've said, Jamie. Absolutely. However, Connolly does describe the moment that he was hit. He knew when he'd been hit because he said it was a massively forceful blow, like he'd been hit with a hammer. He felt it in his back. So he knew the moment he'd been hit, and that's when he turned round to his wife and she pulled him down. Now, when Kennedy gets hit and he raises his arm to his throat, he's still facing Kennedy. He doesn't turn round to his wife.
So his testimony doesn't fit the video.
Yeah.
There's a good 2 or 3 seconds.
Having said that, if you think Connolly was in on the inside job, would you volunteer to sit in front of him when you know that there's going to be people shooting at him? I probably wouldn't.
He does, but I think his evidence though supports that there was more than one shooter. That was one bullet that hit JFK in the neck. That another bullet hit Connolly. Because there's a good 2 or 3 seconds gap, and 2 or 3 seconds doesn't sound like much, except 2 or 3 seconds is 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. It also sounds more plausible, doesn't it? It's much more plausible that Connolly just got hit by a bullet that hit him in the back, came out his chest, was at the right trajectory with the speed that the vehicle's moving at that point to then go through his wrist that was sat on his left leg into his but to have gone through Kennedy first, changed the direction of the bullet, and then gone through him. So it just no. It's far more likely there were 2 bullets that caused those 2 sets of damage to me. To be honest.
Yeah, that does pan out. That Not to mention the fact that a bullet ricocheted off a curb edge on the other side of Dealey Plaza. We won't go into that one.
Oh, and the concrete shard.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's number 4. We won't go into the one in the windshield because that's number 5. We won't go into the one that whistled over that other guy's head. There's number 6. Oh, wait a minute. No, stick to the plot. Yeah. So Jack Ruby, Jack Ruby, obviously.
I forgot about Harvey Oswald.
With our Lee, we know him well, us 3, but our Lee, he's a good lad. No, he isn't. I can't say that. But he's been arrested. He's been arrested for. It's hard to stay focused.
Boy.
Yes. I tell you, right? Everybody who watches me stream, they know that I'm normal, but these 2 distract me massively.
Those are so pretty,
absolutely gorgeous. So we'll move on to our mate Jack because he's Lee Harvey Oswald's been arrested. A couple of days later, he's being taken through the police station. Let's get the banner correct. And he's approached by Jack Ruby and shot again with a 38 special. A lot of them going about back in them days. So a brief synopsis of that. He was born Jacob Leon Rubenstein in 1911. That's not a funny name, so don't laugh.
No, it's the guy in the hat's face. He's like, oh.
Let's have a look. I've got a look now.
What's going on with that?
Yeah, that's Sheriff Doodah. Yeah. I forget his.
It's such a funny face.
Well, look at the guy in the white police hat behind him. He looks like he's forcing out a turd, to be fair.
Yeah, he just did.
And the other guy just behind the hat as well looks bored out of his mind. He's just like looking over, like, what's going on? Whatever.
It's unbelievable.
Right. I mean, all I need to say about this surely is right. So the assassin got assassinated by a police officer that was on a short lifespan due to having cancer anyway. So he was pretty much just doing a favour to his mates before he snuffed it. It's just, this is how you clean up.
Damian, we have to go through the. We have to go through the pro. For somebody who goes off on rabbit trails, I can't believe he went straight to the point in 3 sentences there. That's unbelievable.
That was really bad of me.
Completely out of character. Now, this poor fella here was born Jacob Liam. I can't stop looking at it. I can't stop looking at it. It's that guy's face now. I can't.
Yeah, it did make me laugh. Yeah, it is the best expression ever.
I can hear his voice going, "Oh, hello." Something. Oh, hello.
Absolutely.
Probably more. It's more worry, isn't it? I'm right next to this guy, and he's shooting him. Yeah. It's more. How far away can I get?
And his training is to go. Oh, something. That's his training.
Absolutely unbelievable amount of technology goes into training these people, as well as time, energy, and money. So don't diss him. He had the reactions of a cat. He sat down and he did. Yeah, he sat down and licked his own asshole. So we said, I'm going to get through this. I'm determined. He's born Jacob Liam Rubenstein in 1911 in Chicago, Illinois, and he was a nightclub owner. And he was well known in the underworld, this guy, for dealing in narcotics, prostitution, illegal gambling, all them kind of things, which obviously make him really, really, a stand-up kind of person. Now, he was known to befriend police officers in Dallas and stuff and provide them with free alcohol, prostitutes, and various other favors. Let me go a minute. Yeah, so he shot Lee Harvey Oswald on November the 23rd, 1963. At 11:21 a.m. Central Standard Time, I believe, while authorities were escorting Oswald through the police basement to an armoured car that was to take him to the nearby county jail, Ruby stepped out from a crowd of reporters with his .38 Colt Cobra revolver, aimed at Oswald's abdomen, and fired a single round at point-blank range, mortally wounding him. And the bullet entered Oswald's left side in the front part of the abdomen and caused damage to his spleen, stomach, aorta, vena cava, kidney, liver, diaphragm, and the 11th rib before coming to rest on his right side. So Jack Ruby was then found guilty of murder, sentenced to death, and he appealed the conviction. So a new trial date was set, and it was while he was waiting for the new trial date to come that he died in custody of lung cancer. One sort of thing they tried to throw a little bit of dirt around about him, and I don't suppose they needed to, given the fact that he was known for his drug trafficking, prostitution, illegal gambling, and all the rest of it, was that at the time that JFK was murdered, Ruby was living with a guy called George Senator, who would refer to Ruby as my boyfriend, though when he was questioned by the Warren Commission, he denied that they were homosexual lovers. Now, I don't know if that was thrown out there just to sort of like, in the 1960s especially, he had a different mindset on homosexuality and stuff like that.
They certainly did. Wasn't Eisenhower part of the same club? The same men's club.
How dare you? He was an American hero.
But I'm pretty sure that was why. Wasn't that why Eisenhower was quite malleable when he was in power? Because he had strong links to the mafia, and they reckon the mafia had some video footage on him. The mafia were like the what's his name, weren't they?
They were the height of their power at this point.
They were the Epstein of the day. They had the dirty videos on a lot of people.
Yeah, no, they were the absolute height of their power at this point. This is, I mean, after this, by the 80s, they were starting to decline, but in the 60s, their influence was widespread.
It was all from World War II, wasn't it? And that.
So was his political affiliation? What was JFK? Democrat or Republican? No, Democrat or Republican?
Oh, sorry, I thought he was Democrat, wasn't he?
He was a Democrat. So you'd think the guy that then kills Lee Harvey Oswald would have like strong political links. It's like a revenge killing. Ruby, Democrat or Republican?
Well, he's obviously going to be a Republican because you'd expect him to be a Democrat.
No, he's a Republican.
Yeah.
He voted Republican. So why was he so hell-bent on killing Lee Harvey Oswald?
Yeah, because the official line was that he was absolutely enraged by what Oswald had done, and how dare he kill my president? Which is quite right. He was sort of like batting, if you like, for the other political party.
He was batting for the other team.
Oswald wasn't supposed to make it out of the cinema alive, though, was he?
I don't think he was. No. I have a theory about why Harvey Oswald was at the cinema, at a theatre.
He was meeting his handlers after the event.
I think he's meeting his handlers. I think that was the plan.
I don't think we need to worry about Jack Ruby too much. Basically, he shot Lee Harvey Oswald. He was up for he got convicted of murder. He was going to be doodad. His sentence was execution. He appealed it. They upheld the appeal. There was a retrial set. He died in custody of cancer. Now, there's other chunky things we can move on to. Missing evidence.
Bum, bum, bum.
There's Jack Ruby going for his doing. Okay. All right. So I'll sort of like lead off, I suppose, because I'm too massively disruptive. It's like we're told that Oswald used a Manilica Carcano, but the rifle that was found at the scene was a Mauser 7.65 caliber rifle. Another one is, according to all the reports that were filed by the police agencies involved, was that Oswald wasn't even on the floor from where the shots were alleged to have come from. As we said before, he was at a coke machine on the lower floor when the shots rang out, and several witnesses saw him at that location at the time of the shooting. You know, several people, he was seen at that coke machine and these witnesses again. Their testimonies were ignored by the Warren Commission.
I think he was
given thirsty work, though, man.
Do you think he was given some kind of minor role in the plot, and to then be used as a patsy? So they'd given him something minor so that he was in the right location on the right day to use him as a patsy, and he thought his involvement, some kind of spotter. So something, I don't know, just some kind of minor involvement.
I've always believed he was taking pot shots. I'm not sure about the cocoa. I've always believed he was taking pot shots, but I don't think he got the kill shot. But I think he was positioned. I think he was playing with rifles, and I think he was insane. I think he was positioned. Yeah, he was there. He was there on purpose.
Okay, just the witness testimony about the coke machine thing seems a bit unusual, doesn't it? But that's all.
Even if he wasn't even shooting, even if he was nothing to do with it, why did he behave the way he did immediately afterwards?
True.
It seems strange. He knew something was going on anyway.
Yeah. Which again leads me to believe that he had prior knowledge of what was occurring on that day and was somehow involved in the plot, even if he wasn't. Maybe you're right. Maybe, like you said, you don't mind him having pot shots from there, as long as you've got someone that's gonna give a mark to a proper sniper that's or a proper close range shot that's gonna take him out if they haven't managed to kill him by that certain point. Which is why there's supposedly that marker on the curb, isn't there, as well? Is it still even visible today? The marker on the curb, which is where the car did the slowing to almost the stop.
Yeah.
So he almost had a visual aid of where it was to be, that he could slow the car to make the kill shot as easy as possible.
When you look at that, and you look at because the actual cross is still in the road, I believe, the exact spot where the kill shot was hit Kennedy's head is actually, there's a cross marked on the road, and you look at the distances between. I think that's very revealing, personally, given the speed of the car as well. There's a lot of other things that go against it, and not to mention, of course, the bullet that you get such a thing called case overall length, When it comes to firearms, they get trimmed to a certain length. It's not just the width of the bullet; the cases themselves, the cartridges are actually and obviously have to be an exact length. So you know, a 7.65 won't fit in a 6.5, and so on and so forth. It doesn't work like that. You can't just, like Call of Duty, pick up any bullets that are lying around on the floor or whatever and stick them in a rifle and hope for the best. It isn't quite that easy. So, you know, the rounds didn't match the caliber of the rifle, and then the rifle that he bought on mail order didn't match the caliber of the rounds or the rifle that was found at the scene. And there's lots of, you know, where does it end? Where does it end? That's what you've got to ask yourself. Now, Phyllis Hall, who was the very first nurse to enter Trauma Room 1, which is where President Kennedy was taken. Room 2 was occupied by Governor Connolly. She said that while she was cradling the president's head, she saw a bullet in JFK's neck. And I quote, "I could see a bullet lodged between his ear and his shoulder," she said. "It was pointed at its tip." Bear in mind the magic bullet that was round nose that we saw earlier. This bullet was pointed at its tip, which would suggest a Spitzer type bullet. They're known as Spitzers, and it showed no signs of damage. There was no blunting of the bullet or scarring around the shell from where it had been fired. Now, she said, "I'd had a great deal of experience working with gunshot wounds, but I'd never seen anything like this before. It was about 1.5 inches long, nothing like the bullets that were later produced. It was taken away, but never have I seen it presented in evidence or heard what happened to it. It remains a mystery."
Interesting witness testimony once again that seems to be contradictory to the evidence that was found. But I suppose, given that the only bullet that was found was it the magic bullet, the only bullet that was found, this one that just appeared in the hospital that was found by that engineer?
Yeah.
I mean,
the one that missed, they never found, did they? They never found that round at all. But
or did they? And they just had people cleaning up as much evidence as possible after the event on the day.
Absolutely love his paranoia.
You're talking about missing evidence as well, aren't they? Didn't they remove? Isn't JFK's head missing?
His brain.
There's one. Well, his brain was missing, wasn't it, when they got to autopsy? The other interesting thing is his face was blown off on the front right section, as you can clearly see in the footage. However, the head of the person that was autopsied as JFK didn't appear to have anywhere near the same damage to the front right section of the head.
Well, they're saying that there is a picture. Now, I was going to put this up as one. Obviously, you know, I'm showing the slides and not slides. You know, I'm acting posher than they actually am. The pictures that I'm sticking up, and I was going to include it in this, where you see the actual section of the scalp, the skull bone there, which is like a flap that's come forward. You know, when you look at the video, the flap comes down and to the right towards his ear and back towards the back of the head, not forward. Yet this section of skin that's holding on this chunk of bone, which is like an oval shaped piece of bone, which is towards the front of the face, is flapped forward. And it's like, well, hang on a minute. It's the wrong section of skin. Only a certain section of skin would hold a certain part of your cranium to a certain part of the wound. Surely. You can't just turn it around and super glue it. The autopsy photos don't make sense.
Not at all. And then obviously it's also when the body's presented, isn't it, to Jackie Kennedy and his brother, and they both say that's not Jack.
Well, his brain. I mean, going on about his brain now. In 1978, right, he says that the published findings of the Congressional House Select Committee on Assassinations revealed that JFK's brain had gone missing. Now, some doctors at Parkland Memorial Hospital in Dallas testified that they had seen First Lady Jackie Kennedy holding a part of her husband's brain. Now, remember when I said before, when she was scouting around on the back, and she also said, "I've got my husband's brain, I'm holding his brain," that when he got hit and a bit of his brain matter went onto the back of the car, that's what she was scrambling about at, because doctors seen her holding it. Even Clint Hill said that she was holding some flesh in her hand when he pushed her down into the back of the limousine. So
imagine that's a panic reaction, isn't it, to the situation at that moment? She's like, "Oh, my husband's been shot. Oh, I'll try and grab it. Hopefully they can save him," type thing. Obviously knowing full well, if you thought about it logically,
You do
No.
some stupid stuff when you're in shock. Mate.
Yeah, that's what I was
fair
going to say. So it seems like a legitimate reaction to a shocked, grieving partner.
So
Didn't
she's
want
saying
to
that,
do anything to keep him alive.
yeah, but like you say, because she's shocked, it's trauma, isn't it? Now, she says she's holding a part of his brain, and what happened to it remains unknown. Nobody knows what happened to that particular part of the brain. However, it has been documented that JFK's brain was removed during the autopsy and placed in a stainless steel box that was then handed over to the Secret Service. The box remained locked in the White House until 1965, when JFK's brother, Senator Robert F. Kennedy, ordered the box to be stored in the National Archives building. However, a National Archives inventory of medical evidence from the JFK autopsy, which was conducted in 1966, showed no record of the box or the brain, so now it's gone missing. Now, since the last batch of declassified official JFK assassination records, which were released on November the 9th, 2017, they still haven't got a clue. And where his brain is still a mystery to this day.
There was some I was reading somewhere that supposedly it was pickled in formaldehyde at the hospital by
brain.
some of the doctors. Yeah, at the hospital when the body arrived. But I mean, there's the whole confusion about that. I mean, the amount of ambulances that were out, that were being followed by various bits of the media. They didn't know which ambulance JFK's body was in, and then it was coming in on a helicopter. But then there were multiple helicopters in the sky all night that night in Dallas, which again is unusual, but there were. So it's almost like there was a policy to create panic and manipulate the flow of information and confusion on that day in Dallas, just by yeah.
There's also the things like Parkland Hospital eyewitnesses say that when they then saw sort of autopsy photos later from Bethesda Hospital, that they didn't match. They said they described one set of wounds, and they saw the autopsy photos and said, "Well, that's not what I saw."
Yeah.
Which is again just more.
There was an interesting police officer, wasn't there, that also died on the same day as JFK. In fact, I forget, he was a local police officer in Dallas, and they even called him as a nickname JFK because he resembled JFK that much.
He was like the body double for the autopsy.
Yes. So this is so basically he died on the same day, and his body was the one that was then used for the autopsy. The real JFK body, because of the number of shots that had to be fired and because of the front of his face being blown off, couldn't be used for the pictures. And somebody did up this other guy on the supposed flight on Air Force One and Air Force Two that was switched. So the Air Force Two landed before Air Force One, and then his body went in as JFK's, and there was confusion around coffins.
He was sworn in, weren't he? Right over the top of the bleeding casket, pretty much, really.
Yeah.
The other thing is, because we need to be cracking on, really, I suppose. But the wind, no. The windshield thing is the windshield bullet hole in the windshield, because as the limousine is parked at the hospital. Not at Bethesda because that's the military hospital. But is it Parkview?
Parkland.
Parkland, yeah, Parkland Memorial. That's the one. As it's parked at Parkland Memorial, 5 people there examined the screen and saw that there was also an order put in to replace the windscreen. And the chip for that went missing, although the company that provided it said, no, we did provide a new windscreen for it. There was no damage to the windscreen, so why did they need to replace it? But people saw a bullet hole in it. Now, these people include a police officer from Dallas called H.R. Freeman. He said he was right beside it. He could have touched it, and it was definitely a bullet hole. You could tell what it was. Another police officer called Stavis Ellis. Apologies, sir, if you're still alive, and I can't pronounce your name. But he said you could put a pencil through it, and a Secret Service agent was there and tried to persuade him that what he was seeing was a fragment and not a hole. But Mr. Ellis, Officer Ellis, was saying, no, it wasn't a damn fragment, it was a hole. One of the doctors that was at Parkland Memorial, Dr. Evalia Glanges, pronunciation, I'm sorry, was a second-year medical student at Southwestern, and she said she saw the bullet hole in the windshield And when she called attention to it, the limousine got drove away out of the way. And she said she could tell it was an entrance hole that went through the front of the windshield. Another one, there's two more left. A St. Louis Post-Dispatch reporter, Richard Dudman, said a few of us that were waiting around at the hospital, because obviously they followed him there, they knew what had gone on, the president had been shot, so that a few of us noted the hole in the windshield when the limousine was standing at the emergency entrance after the president had been carried inside. I couldn't approach close enough to see which side was the cup-shaped spot, which indicates a bullet had pierced the glass from the opposite side. And then Secret Service agent, one of them opened his mouth, Charles Taylor Jr., inside the White House garage during the vehicle's inspection, wrote, in addition, of particular note was the small hole just left of the center in the windshield, from which appeared to be bullet fragments were removed. And as you look at that picture, you can see to the left of center, the yellow boxes as you're looking at on the screen there. Tell me it's showing, and I'm not talking to myself. Blood spatter off fragments of matter, flesh or something like that. And then as you look at this picture here, which you're taken obviously immediately after, you can still see Jackie Kennedy's on the rear of the vehicle there, being pushed in by a Clint, secret agent Clint Hill. You can see in the red areas there the bullet hole in the screen to the left center of the wing of the rear view mirror. It's there to be seen. So there's a bullet hole in the window of the presidential limousine, which is also there, front left. It looks to our right, obviously, because of where we're looking at it from, but front left as you're looking out, there it is again.
And when authorities tend to ignore evidence, that tends to be the evidence you need to look at.
Consciously,
the reason they're ignoring it. Sorry,
I've always argued though that there would be, if I was planning this, I would have one sharpshooter, one sniper, one shot, one kill, and I would have him positioned roughly in the same place as Oswald, so that the forensics matched up. But obviously here we're talking about the forensics don't match up. There's lots of evidence here that suggests they actually created a kill box, which is just, I can't quite get my head around that they were so worried or so convinced that JFK had to die, they couldn't mess this up. So they had multiple shooters putting him in it's a
kill zone
tactic. If you want to kill somebody,
it's a kill zone, isn't it? Yeah, it's a kill zone.
You create a kill zone, you create a kill box, yeah, and you hit him from multiple angles to make sure you kill him.
It smacks of an ambush, of almost like exactly a military grade ambush. Yeah, that's.
Yeah. But I mean, I just can't get my head around it. That's not how I would do it. But maybe I'm thinking about more modern weapons for a start, where I could take the wing off a fly at 200 meters with the right weapon 100% of the time. But in the 60s, with a weapon like this, were they maybe not convinced about being able to do it? So like you said, they created a kill zone, they created a kill box instead. I'm trying to get my head around the planning.
Well, it was the last resort, perhaps. I think they were trying to make it look like a lone gunman. Okay, and I think the whole then he was a patsy, and the idea was to push the narrative down that road, and they wanted to have a picture of Kennedy's body with a single bullet hole from the back of the head that they could post round to the world. Yeah, this lone gunman, and then they can kill him off and put it all to bed. I mean, it's nice, open and shut case. Lee Harvey Oswald, unpatriotic, Soviet, communist sympathizer, murders the US president. Close book. Park that over there. That's what they wanted. In reality, that didn't happen. And then I think, they had a backup of the kill box / somebody that was much closer that made the final shot somewhere around the grassy knoll and to be honest, I think it was a conglomeration of the mafia, the CIA, probably hired guns, the hired assassins that the CIA knew that had hired them for various jobs, or the mafia knew and hired them for various jobs. I think there were probably several assassins or marksmen, sharpshooters there that day to make sure the job got done. And as
the risk is
the time went on, the panic grew. And that's when they stopped doing the perhaps originally they started off with radio and sequence shots where they were on it, and then the next shot, ready, fire, bang, 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 from 3 different locations all at the same time. But as you realise that the shots are missing and your target's not down, I think that then the game has to up, doesn't it? And there has to be a backup at the end of it. No?
Very possible. Okay. No, and the risk is you don't kill him and you create a martyr. Oh, no, not a martyr. So you create a hero. I suppose that's a risk. So I suppose the theory that way is shoot him lots of times, and that's why.
It's, I suppose in a way, martyr sort of like it is sort of fitting because of the way that he's still like judged after all these years. So yeah, kill a martyr, make a martyr, blame a social pariah. That's the way that it seemed to be, in my opinion. So let's have a little bit of this action. What the agents had to say. Because I know like it chomping at the bit to be cracking on with what we think went down, because that's always the best bit in it when we talk about what we think. Now on the screen there he's the driver. That's Agent Gray. A basic quick rundown of what these people say, then we'll throw it about and see what we think, kind of thing, because this has been a bit of a long one. Now he was questioned by the Warren Commission with this Mr. Spectre guy. I hope it wasn't Phil, because you want to watch what that fella gets up to. But he was questioned by a Mr. Spectre, who said to him, "Now, would you tell us just what occurred as you were proceeding down Elm Street at that time?" Now, Mr. Greer, again, the driver, said, "Well, when we were going down Elm Street, I heard a noise that I thought was a backfire of one of the motorcycle policemen. And it did not affect me like anything else. I just thought that it is what it was." I don't know what he means by that. But we had so many motorcycles around us, so I heard this noise and I thought that is what it was. And then I heard it again. And I glanced over my shoulder and I saw Governor Connolly like he was starting to fall. Then I realized there was something wrong. I tramped on the accelerator, and at the same time, Mr. Kellerman said to me, "Get out of here fast." And I cannot remember even the other shots or noises that was. I cannot quite remember anymore. I did not see anything happen behind me anymore because I was occupied with getting away. I just want to bring something up. Now, he said that he heard the shots, yada, yada, and he glanced over his shoulder and he saw then that Governor Connolly was looking like he was starting to fall. Watch the video, because the timing doesn't match up with that either. Because you see Greer look over his right shoulder to look at Connolly when Connolly's being dragged down, which is a good couple of seconds after that shot, which hit Kennedy in the back of the neck, come out of his throat, the magic bullet one, that one. It doesn't match up. The video proves that I don't know. I just can't get away from that particular one.
Greer turns and looks just to see JFK's head explode as well. If you look,
yes,
he turns. Half a second later, there's the kill shot. To me, it looks like he's turning. He's slowed down, which a lot of witnesses said that after the first shot, he did slow down, and then he's turned to make sure JFK's dead. And as soon as he sees JFK's head explode, he put his foot down.
Yeah, that's when the speed away.
He wasn't allowed to actually put his foot down and leg it until Kellerman told him to, which actually was correct at the time. Kellerman, he should have waited for Kellerman's order. That's not true anymore. That's
no, but at that time, Kellerman was lead bodyguard on board the vehicle. Now, Kellerman, who's on the screen now, who was the passenger, as Jay just said. Again, this Mr. Spectre done some great job with this soul music, that lad. But Mr. Spectre said, "All right, now describe what occurred as you proceeded down Elm Street after turning off Houston." Now, Kellerman, Agent Kellerman, who was in the passenger seat, who was the one, as Jay just said, told him to boot it, told Greer to boot it, put his foot down and get out of there. He said, Kellerman said, that is, as we turned off Houston onto Elm and made the short little dip to the left going down grade, as I said, we were away from buildings, and where there was a sign on the side of the road, which I don't recall what it was or what it said, but we no more than passed that and you were out in the open, and there was a report like a firecracker, a pop, and I turned my head to the right because whatever this noise was, I was sure it came from the right and perhaps into the rear. And as I turned my head to the right to view whatever it was or see whatever it was, I heard a voice from the back seat, and I firmly believe it was the president saying, "My God, I am hit." And I turned around and he has his hands up like here like this. So he assumed he's on about the elbows up, clenched fist at the throat gesture. There was enough for me to verify that the man was hit. So in the same motion, watch the video footage, people, because it's all there. It doesn't all tally up. So in the same motion, I come right back and grabbed the speaker and said to the driver, let's get out of here. We are hit. And grabbed the mic. And I said, Lawson, this is the follow-up car with Secret Service agents on it. Lawson, this is Kellerman. This is Lawson, who is in the front car. We are hit. So the car preceding the president, I beg your pardon. We are hit. Get us into the hospital immediately. Now, in the seconds that I talked just now, a flurry of shells come into the car. A flurry of shells come into the car. I then look back, and this time Mr. Hill, who was riding on the left front bumper of our follow-up car, this is Clint Hill, the Secret Service agent, was on the back trunk of that car, and the president was sideways down into the back seat. So he's described him in a flurry of shots. Kellerman.
Yeah. A single Secret Service agent was given a warning or any sort of letter in their file or anything. Nobody was investigated. The president was murdered, and there wasn't a single investigation into the lead person to decide if anybody was even remotely responsible. Yeah.
Now we got one more.
It's almost like you've got somebody sweeping up from a very high level that's not even entertaining there being a single investigation into that side of it. The power that the people that have behind this that it does make interesting.
Now, Clint Hill, who's on the screen here, this is the Secret Service agent that was on the follow-up car on the running board on the left-hand side of the vehicle that ran to the president's car as Jackie Kennedy was reaching across the back of the car after the shot that hit the president's head. This is the gentleman you'll see in a lot of pictures who runs up and jumps onto the back of the vehicle and gets Jackie Kennedy down into the back seat and puts his body over the top of hers. So this is Agent Clint Hill here. So to many people, ostensibly an American legend and hero. And again, Mr. Spector from the Warren Commission said to him, now as the motorcade proceeded at that point, tell us what happened. There's lots more before this. Obviously, I'm just truncating everything. And he said, well, as we came out of the curve and began to straighten up, I was viewing the area which looked to be a park. There were people scattered throughout the entire park. And I heard a noise from my right rear, which to me seemed to be a firecracker. I immediately looked to my right, and in so doing, my eyes had to cross the presidential limousine, and I saw President Kennedy grab at himself and lurch forward and to the left. Mr. Spector then said, why don't you just proceed in narrative form so you can tell us? And then another guy called Boggs said, this was the first shot. So Clint Hill said, yes, this is the first sound that I heard. Yes, sir. I jumped from the car, realizing that something was wrong, ran to the presidential limousine. Just about as I reached it, there was another sound which was different than the first sound. I think I described it in my statement as though someone was shooting a revolver into a hard object. It seemed to have some type of an echo. Between the time I originally grabbed the handhold and until I was up on the car, Mrs. Kennedy, the second noise that I had heard, had removed a portion of the president's head, and he had slumped noticeably to his left. Mrs. Kennedy had jumped up from the seat and was, it appeared to me, reaching for something coming off the right rear bumper of the car, the right rear tail. When she noticed that I was trying to climb onto the car, she turned toward me and I grabbed her and put her in the back seat, crawled up on top of the back seat and lay there. So that's what Clint Hill's saying, the gentleman on the screen there.
And so he used the same language that he called the first shot a firecracker. The other
also, yeah,
it the same way.
It's interesting. It's interesting that your first thought is a firecracker or a motorcycle or a car backfiring rather than a gunshot when you work in a protection service for the president, which deals with gunshots.
Yeah, it's one of the things you look for though, as well. And when in testimony, if people use the same words, the chances are
it's it's rigged, Jamie. Oh, you've dropped out.
No, got him again.
I'm back.
Back again.
it's if you look for things like when in testimony when people use similar phrases or similar wording, it's sometimes an indicator that they've been discussing their
Deception.
testimony beforehand.
And that suggests a narrative, doesn't it? A preconceived notion or preconceived narrative.
Possible.
Well, I do think the Secret Service had to be in on it. There's no way you could do that without the Secret Service being in on it. You needed the driver to do that stop at the point at the end to make sure that the kill occurred at that point if it hadn't already by that point. So there's no way that the very least the driver was in on it.
Yeah, Will agrees up to his neck, I think.
If not, at least his superior probably as well. I would imagine. I forgot his name now. Was it Kelly? No, I don't know.
No, to slow down.
Sort of Kellerman was, yeah. But
Kellerman, sorry, that was it.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about what the agents had to say. We do it. This is a bit of a long one, but we've got to do the main one. Well, no, I wouldn't say it's the main one, but it's a very important one. Is why was JFK killed?
Jamie alluded to it all at the start of the.
I ruined it in the first 5 minutes.
The start of the documentary, really. Yeah, in fact, all of it. Why was he killed? All of those reasons you mentioned.
He'd annoyed everybody.
Well, I'm glad we've said this because I've made a little bit of a list. Now, I know that I said before he hadn't really done a great deal of work, but he did do a little bit. I did do a little bit. Not as much as I would have liked for this one, so you'll have to excuse me, but I have done a little bit, and I can't help myself. I'm just as bad as you two are. But I think it's important to sort of like, yeah, Jamie mentioned a good few of them before. And it is really pretty much just like elaborating on what you've already said. And not so much again. Okay, so on June the 4th in 1963, Kennedy signed an executive order like 11-11-10, and which you was talking about before, Jamie. And this order gave the authority to the United States Treasury to print money with complete autonomy from the Federal Reserve. And the Treasury became authorized to issue silver certificate currency backed by the United States silver reserves. And Kennedy authorized $4.3 billion of silver-backed currency to be printed. Now, if this money was allowed into circulation, it would have been the end of the Federal Reserve, and the cabal or the Committee of 300, whatever you want to call them, would not have allowed it to happen. And other like they call them, other brave men, but other people in the past had tried to stop these private banksters from like running the government's money supply. Now, the primary owners of the Federal Reserve Bank are the Rothschilds of London and Berlin, the Lazar brothers of Paris, Israel Moses Siaf of Italy, Kuhn Loeb and Company of Germany, New York, Warburg and Company of Hamburg in Germany, the Lehman brothers of New York, Goldman Sachs of New York. We've all heard these names before in other things, and the Rockefeller brothers of New York.
Did you miss JP Morgan as well? Was it? Did you say Morgan?
He might have been at a later date, but as of 1963, he wasn't one of the primary owners.
Oh, was he not back then? Okay.
Now, 4 out of 5 of American presidents who opposed privately held central banks while in office were assassinated.
Including
4
Abraham
out of 5
Lincoln.
of them.
Yeah.
Yes, Abraham
Who also
Lincoln
has very, very, very similarities between his and JFK's assassination. In fact, the similarities are mind-boggling. How many there are.
James Garfield, William McKinley, and JFK. So you got Abraham Lincoln, James Garfield, William McKinley, and John F. Kennedy. 4 out of 5 American presidents who opposed privately held central banks. And they're the only US presidential assassinations in history. So all of them have been attributed to opposing the federal bank. Okay. People are saying that they're all murdered by the Illuminati and all that kind of stuff. But had he succeeded in doing it with the silver dollars, the US would have been totally free of debt, and people wouldn't have had any income tax to pay, ostensibly. Another thing is, one of the things that shook the secret upper level of the parallel government, that's because people think there's a parallel government in Washington, which would make sense when you realize that the presidents don't have complete power, was Kennedy's open revulsion of secrets in government. Because in 1961, he said, the very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are inherently opposed to the secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. There's loads of other things. He ordered the CIA to be brought to heel, as Jay said, and transferred most of its powers to the Joint Chiefs of Staff through national security actions, memorandums 55, 56, and 57.
Well, the CIA had just become the mafia of the world, basically, in Kennedy's eyes, hadn't they?
Yeah. And he fired Alan Dulles, who was the head of the CIA at the time, over the Bay of Pigs fiasco type of thing. And then Dulles was then given a position on the Warren Commission, which investigated the death of Kennedy.
Yeah.
Just thought I'd throw that in there. And another reason is that he wanted US involvement in Vietnam to end, and he gave orders that US involvement in South Vietnam should be ended as soon as practicable, and to start being pulled out. And he ordered Defense Secretary McNamara to publicly announce that order. So all troops were out of Vietnam by October 1965. I suppose this last one, there's loads of it here, you know. Kill zone thing's a good one, because of Dealey Plaza and everything. In Kennedy's last fiscal budget year of 1964, Israeli aid was 40 million. In Lyndon Baines Johnson first budget of 1965, it had gone up to 71 million, and in 1966 it was tripled to 130 million. So it also says that during Kennedy's administration, almost none of the US aid to Israel was military in nature. Instead, it was split equally between development loans and food assistance under the PL 480 program. Yet in 1965, under President Johnson administration, 20% of US aid to Israel was for the military. And in 1966, the following year, 71% of it was used for war-related materials. And the figures, it shows because Kennedy was against making Israel a dominant force in the Middle East.
Yeah, what was it? Now, there's a lyric I quite like here. You're giving them millions. You're giving them billions to kill Palestinians.
Now this just to tie it all in, and then I'll shut up and let you guys run free reign with it. But just to tie it up, is that the Dallas leg of JFK's Texas trip was sponsored by the Citizens Council, which is an elite business group that ruled Dallas. And two of the three key figures who dominated the Citizens Council were Jewish. Now, it was known that he weren't happy about providing military aid or money for military products in Israel. A Jewish guy called Sam Bloom was on the board of directors of the Dallas Time Herald. He had his own advertising company, and he was a key figure in the Citizens Council. Now, the route Kennedy was taking down Dealey Plaza had been described in detail as like a week earlier by his newspaper. Yeah. Now, JFK's trip to Dallas. Exactly. Now, that's totally against it. Bear with me and then I'll throw it out. But JFK's trip to Dallas was officially a non-political one. But his trips to other Dallas stops in Houston and Austin were designated as political trips. Dallas wasn't. But because it was a non-political visit, the Dallas Citizens Council again paid for and planned his trip to Dallas. And this took his trip out of the control of JFK's own Democratic Committee. So this put JFK's visits to Dallas under the control of that Sam Bloom, the Dallas Jewish leader, and the Citizens Council's longtime executive director. They also wanted the president to speak at the Women's Building, the original planners, but the Citizens Council insisted he spoke at the Trade Mart, wanting him to make JFK to speak at the Trade Mart, made sure that his limo had to pass through Dealey Plaza and Elm Street, which turned out to be, as you put it before, the kill zone.
Pretty convincing, really. It's very difficult to argue anything else. The only really argument I would even start to talk about is whether Lee Harvey Oswald fired any shots.
Well, it's questionable, but he may have done, he may not have done. I don't think that's really neither here nor there, to be honest, in terms of understanding the events of that day. If he was taking some pot shots, fair enough. If he didn't, he didn't. He was the patsy that he used, just in the right location on the right day. I mean, the other thing we haven't mentioned that I think is also really, really relevant is the meeting that occurred the night before of the Dallas oil tycoons that included a H.W. Bush, George H.W. Bush, as well as some other oil tycoons. They think LBJ was there. They also think this is where the events were finalised for the day following. It's also very interesting when you realise that Prescott Bush was the one that started the CIA 30 years prior, and then that it was George H.W. Bush that was probably at this meeting in Dallas where they made the final preparations for the assassination of him the next day. And then the White Office has been in the stranglehold of the Bush family for the last 100-odd years or so, really, when you think about it. And to everyone's surprise, the younger George Bush became president out of nowhere as well.
Yeah.
And I think that the Bush family is quite likely the primary planners of the assassination of JFK and the stranglehold on the White House since.
Well, George Bush Sr. was head of the CIA just after this incident as well, wasn't he? Was it the early 70s?
There's just too many coincidences. And then the Bush and the Bin Ladens have an oil company as well. And come on, really? Like, no, this is like, there's too many coincidences. There's far too many in this global political arena. We're being lied to on a massive front.
We all know, though, it's really about aliens. It is. JFK was going to tell everybody about the aliens, and he told Marilyn Monroe, and that's why they killed her. Come on.
Maybe.
JFK was the world's last chance at disclosure, guys.
Yeah. I tell you what, JFK wouldn't have been invited to Bohemian Grove anyway. They wouldn't have had him there.
No.
Because he was like against the secrets. I just think there's on the day, there's too many things that just like scream out to me. Some bloke on the road that could see and give the description of Oswald. No. The magic bullet. No. It doesn't make any sense. That Lee Harvey Oswald jumped on a bus, then got a taxi because the road was too busy.
Yeah.
Got back to his lodgings where he'd been safe. All he did then was change his jacket, and then he went to this theatre. Why? Why would he get back to somewhere that he would be safe, off the street? Why did he go to think? I think he went there because he was told to go there, and whoever was handling him was basically said, "We're going to get you out of the country. You meet us there. We'll get you out of the country." I actually think that Lippitt, the officer that got shot, was possibly supposed to kill him. And
JD Tippett.
Yeah. I think so
Oswald
as well.
got the drop on him. I don't think Oswald was ever supposed to be arrested. I think he was supposed to be shot during his escape.
Correct. Yeah, I agree with that.
And it got out of hand, sort of thing. He got out of, they would call it, he got out of pocket, they would call it. But so his behaviour on the day screams to me that he knew something was going on. I've always suspected that he possibly did take pot shots at JFK, and he was there shouting, I'm a patsy," because he knows he didn't get the kill shot. And actually, he was kind of pissed off. They kind of felt like he possibly felt like he'd had the glory took away from him, like they'd made a fool of him, and then possibly also knew that they tried to kill him, which would also piss him off. It just screams at me that there was a conspiracy because JFK annoyed a lot of people, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if it was in a back room at Bohemian Grove that this was decided to be done.
Damian?
Yeah, quite possibly. I think that there's, I don't know, there seems to be some more evidence online that there was a meeting of these Dallas oil tycoons that sort of that were going to be significantly out of pocket if JFK was left in power. They already had somebody.
That would just be the gold, wouldn't it? That would just be the final. Are you certain? Are you sure you want to do this? Because once we've done it, we can't take it back.
Yeah,
once
but they
blow his head off, we can't.
They had LBJ that was willing to come in as vice president straight away and toe the line and correct all the things that they wanted correcting that JFK wasn't doing right, that was affecting their profits. and their business interests. And if there's one thing we know about these elitists, international bankers, they're not patriotic. They don't consider themselves to be any one country that they're from. They're truly international in the sense of the word international, and they never seem to end up in any court in any country.
Money's their religion. Money's their God.
That's what tells me that they really run the world.
Yeah.
Deep, but I like it.
It's true.
Like it. That's the way. That's the way we sort of rock, though, isn't it? So, I mean, you know, was there a conspiracy surrounding the death of President John F. Kennedy? We're saying yeah, really, aren't we?
Well, it's not even a theory anymore. He was assassinated, and it's pretty clear that the American government was involved on some level. In fact, I think you could argue with the evidence that we presented that the CIA were involved, the Secret Service were involved, local law enforcement was probably involved.
On some level, yeah.
I think in order to attempt to try and get away with the plan, then they must have also had probably even people, local medical staff, the people that were doing the autopsy, that obviously had to make the admission that the entry and exit wound were the same on one shot. So it was a bullet that did a U-turn inside his head and came back out the path that it went in. You must have had these people paid off nicely to make otherwise they wouldn't have gone along with it. So I imagine there were a lot of bribes.
There were patriots that believed JFK was a threat.
Yeah,
better than money in some ways.
That is true. I would have loved to have seen the Secret Service agents testify under oath and watch the body language. Watch the body, because I'm a big thing. I've got a big thing about body language, and I would have liked to have seen the way that they acted, the way that the face was acting, where they looked, where they tried to access certain memories, and it's just perhaps that's just me, but I like all that kind of thing. It would have been very interesting to see how they held themselves when they were under
I agree.
Giving the testimony. I think that would have been very revealing.
Indeed, and I think you would have had some footage there that would have probably only corroborated the conspiracy further. To be quite honest,
the reason why that wasn't filmed, probably.
Yeah. Well, it's not like would like to rock something like that. Well, I mean, I'm going off on a little bit, but it's not a tangent. We collaborate, don't we? It would be to do something like that, maybe a famous one, and give our take on what they're doing. I think we could do that'd be a bit of fun to do one day if you're up for it, guys.
Definitely.
There's some interesting footage on YouTube of Prince Andrew and the body language in his interview about the Epstein scandal online that's been released. And let's put it this way: Prince Andrew isn't painted in the great picture by any body language experts.
You don't need to be a body language expert just to realise that man was sweating like a pig and trying to talk his way out.
He doesn't sweat.
No, that's the thing. He said that, didn't he? Yeah.
He doesn't sweat.
Yeah, you watched that.
Like a pig to me.
Yeah, you watched that video.
It's impossible.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it must be that roof where they're doing that interview must be leaking then, because he's got plenty of moisture dripping down his face.
Yeah,
I'll say that.
He'll just hide in Windsor Castle for 30 years now. That's all he'll do.
No, I don't.
Yeah,
that's about it. Have we sort of covered it? Do you think, there, guys?
I think so.
I mean, you know.
Yeah. Oh, we did forget that Woody Harrelson's dad did it. Other than that,
yes.
got it covered.
Oh yeah, you are right, because Woody Harrelson's dad had strong links to the mafia, wasn't he?
That's why I said about the hobos. He was one of the hobos, apparently.
Well, I'll tell you what, for the sake of it, I will quickly put that back up. No, it doesn't matter, does it? We've moved on.
Yeah, apparently you can Google that as a theory. It's probably pretty unlikely, but to be fair, Woody Harrelson's dad was a murderer, so
yes,
Woody Harrelson's dad did it, and William Greer is Stephen Greer's, the UFO guy's son. Stephen Greer is his son.
That doesn't surprise me in the slightest.
It's not true. I did a Stephen Greer video. And
you loved it. Like
you got a comment saying his dad murdered JFK.
Somebody will be along.
It's not that funny.
Somebody will watch it at a later day and think you're joking. Really? You just know it.
It's not true.
Like,
So,
no,
but it's a good one.
people, no.
Yeah.
Don't believe everything you hear on the internet unless we say it. That's what we're saying.
Isn't that what pretty much everybody says?
Okay.
Don't believe
So-
them. Believe me.
What's let me tell you, I'll tell you like outright now, don't believe a word he says. Trust me, if there's anybody on this panel worth believing, it's me.
Yeah.
True.
But a liar would say that. So
Only a lie. Touche off the back of what you've just said yourself. So absolutely I agree with you. What have we got in line for next week? Have you made a decision, guys?
yes, because we're going away for the weekend. Me and Damian are going away, and we're going to be staying in a tent at the weekend.
Oh, okay.
How are we, mate? Damian.
Good weather for it, at least.
Damian. Oh, yeah, it's going to be lovely.
Chicken
It's
wing.
not just an excuse to get away from the wives and get beard up. We're going to Rendlesham Forest for the weekend.
Okay.
And so next weekend we will be discussing Rendlesham Forest. We'll do a video at the weekend that will hopefully, if I get it done in time, be premiering on the Tuesday, telling you the story, seeing the area. We'll do a lovely video chatting about.
Or you could just look at my video I done a month ago about Rendlesham Forest.
then,
Nudge,
yes.
nudge, wink, wink.
Which we will use as research. So thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. But also, we're going to be doing a CE5 experiment. So we're going to try to do a bit of CE5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, and using Greer's principles.
You did watch.
Why?
You did watch some of these videos about when we did the last one on the missing 411 stuff, and you know how good it is to go and sleep in the middle of forest.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
Try and.
We're not going to sleep in the middle of a forest, mate. We're going to sleep at a campsite. We're
uh,
going to sit in the middle of a forest and try to call aliens to us with our brains.
Do you how serious do you expect to be taken now you've mentioned Stephen Greer's name?
Not seriously at all. But I separate CE5 from Stephen Greer.
Good
Stephen
man.
Greer is a joke, and he likes money. CE5 could have. I can see why it might be a thing, but anyway, we're going to try it. And I was thinking, let's try it somewhere that's actually like a focal point for UFOs, and let's do it at Rendlesham Forest. So we'll do it live. We'll have a camera thing. We'll have a camera on Facebook as well. We'll be at Facebook Live at the same time.
Fantastic.
Everybody come and have a look. So also next week, I think we'll have a bit of a chat about CE5 and what we actually think of it. And hey, God knows, we might even see something. So next week, it'll be a video about us saying, right, when that UFO visited us at Rendlesham Forest and the alien got out and slapped Damian in the face, wasn't that really good YouTube video? How good was that?
Absolutely.
Damian slowly disappearing backwards as he pushed you forward.
We are expecting you to be the sacrificial lamb for a viral YouTube video, Damo.
Dude,
That's what's going down. That's what he's saying, basically.
Damian, if someone's getting probed, mate, it's you. I promise you.
Anally probed. That's what's going down here. So that's all great. That's all great. You're going camping at weekends. Sorry, Jay, one sec, brother. You're going camping at weekend. Like it. Yeah. So there's a video going out on Tuesday. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, all that kind of. What about Wednesday? So are we talking about Rendlesham then? What have we got in store for Mr.
And then we're talking about Rendlesham on Wednesday. So we will tell the story on the Tuesday. And then we will discuss what we actually think on the Wednesday. And we'll have a bit of a discussion about CE5 as well.
I think that is absolutely fantastic. I'm excited.
I maintain I've got a semi on. I've been looking forward to doing this Rendlesham Forest trip for 2 freaking years. We planned it, and then bloody COVID came along, and they shut all the campsites. Oh, I've said the C word.
He said the C word. I won't worry about that.
But yeah, so I've been looking forward to this for 2 years. So I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to it.
So next Wednesday on Brief History of Mystery channel with these 2 wonderful gentlemen. I'll probably be knocking around as well. You know what I'm like. We'll be doing the Rendlesham Forest thing and discussing what these 2 miscreants got up to. I hope you have a really good time, by the way, guys. I'm expecting I've got high expectations of you.
There might be a couple of live videos over the weekend, and I'm not promising I'll be sober for any of them.
That alone is worth tuning in for.
Yeah.
I think just to see these 2 slotted out of the face. So with that, I'm probably going to go live again later on if anybody wants to chat to me. If you don't, fair enough, I completely get it. But thank you for joining us tonight.
thank you from me as well. So there you go.
Yeah.
And I want a big thanks to Jamie and to Damian for doing it. We absolutely love doing this, love having fun. We had the time off thing due to the football, but we're back now. We're back. So thanks for.
It's hard to compete with global sporting events anyway. I imagine a lot of people's attention is elsewhere than perhaps conspiracies during a global football tournament.
Well,
the majority of the masses are. Maybe not.
3/4 of our viewers are American. They don't give a crap. We must remember not to do a video on the Super Bowl. That's what we need to do.
The thing is, he's all joking aside. Beyond a certain time frame, that is definitely true of me, of my channel. As I assume that what you're saying is true of your own. I don't even know. We could have done this after we'd stopped. But anyway, when if I'm doing a stream at like a time during the day in the UK, I'll get a certain like amount of traffic into a stream. If I do it at another time of day, it's all the US, the people in the US, and they get a different kind of thing. So yeah, you've got to we're out of here.
60% of our viewers are American. Anyway,
60%.
Good night, everybody. So,
thanks for watching us. We're going to all talk about you when we've gone off. See you later. Thanks, everybody.
See you next week.
Good night, guys.